Good afternoon, patrons, and welcome to the March 2018 Patroncast. It's that time of the month again. In fact, actually, it's a bit earlier than usual. If this comes out when I think it's going to come out, it will actually be April 1st. So, as a result, in honour of that, I will be answering every question incorrectly. I won't. Or will I? Probably not. Well, maybe I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. So, good month, March. Probably kind of actually, one thing I wanted to talk about in particular, because I thought it was kind of interesting, of course, is we did a big collab event. We actually managed to get Mr. Nerd Cubed and Matophobia and Up Is Not Jump on the channel. Oh, I love Up Is Not Jump's channel. It's really good. I think I first saw one of his videos not even that long ago, like a few months ago, and I thought, oh, it's really good stuff. I just kind of got in contact with him and just was chatting with him, and yeah, now he's kind of a friend of the channel, which is absolutely lovely. I think he produces some really, really fun stuff, so fantastic to have him aboard. But yeah, big collabs they're a lot of work. So I kind of wanted to talk about them, because there's a reason why I think most YouTubers don't do huge amounts of collabs. Because collabs, they take a lot of planning to get right. They're really, really labour intensive. And you absolutely, they're good things. It's always good for audiences to cross-pollinate. Is that a good analogy? I think that's a good analogy. It's always good for audiences to cross-pollinate. Because, it's not if, a fan of one channel starts following another, that hurts the first channel. It just basically, it's probably, if anything, it's mutually beneficial, because audiences will kind of migrate both ways, and people will just discover new stuff they like. So it's always a good thing. But it's a lot of work. So on this occasion, I was the one that actually planned the event. So I was the one that had to kind of put in the legwork to make it all happen. So I decided I wanted to kind of do this kind of Sea of Thieves thing. When you put it together, I knew I had to find 3 people, but I didn't know who those 3 people were going to be. I approached Matt about it first and kind of asked him and said, okay, tentatively I'm going to ask Dan as well, but do you want to be involved? So Matt said yes, and then I said, okay, so I will approach Dan, but I also wanted to speak to Up Is Not Jump, but he doesn't normally do kind of traditional Let's Play gameplay videos, so I didn't know whether he'd actually be up for it or not. So I also kind of had Claire in mind as a reserve 4th player, just in case Dan couldn't make it. But if Dan and Up Is Not Jump both didn't want to be along, that would have meant I would need to have gone out and also found a different person as well. So fortunately, everyone actually said yes. Then I needed to actually organise the right day for it. So I needed to basically synchronise calendars. I needed to find a day that me and 3 other people could all do, and also a time. The time wasn't so bad because we were all UK based, but if you start getting Americans involved, then it starts getting a bit more dicey, because the recording session takes a very long time. We were recording for about 4 hours. So finding a 4-hour window when everyone's happy to do, that's a good, decent, sensible time for UK people and US people, starts getting a bit on the tricky side. So fortunately we were all in the same time zone, which kind of made that a little bit easier. And then it came up to the games, because I was the person that suggested this. It was up to me to sort out the game code, because it's impolite to ask someone to be out of pocket to actually come and basically appear on your channel. So as a result, I needed to get hold of 4 codes for Sea of Thieves. So fortunately, I was able to write to Rare, and actually I think Claire did most of the legwork on that. So Claire was basically able to get in contact with Rare, and basically we tried to actually explain to them what we were doing. We're saying, okay, we're putting together this fairly big collaboration, and it's with these people, and they've got good sized channels too. So it's actually a really cool big thing we want to show off. We want to do it fairly close to the launch. If we can, it's going to be a good deal. So therefore we're going to need can you send us 4 free copies of Sea of Thieves, which they wouldn't normally do. And you have to kind of, make lots of allowances. You don't have to send them to me. It's fine if there's a kind of an issue around knowing whether or not I'm actually telling the truth, because even though I'm a fairly large channel, they can't be... I've actually changed the back end of, my channel now, so now, devs can verify I am who I say I am based on my email address, but, sometimes they don't like sending multiple codes to one person on the promise you will pass them on. So I said, look, here's the email addresses for those 2 guys, you can verify those in these locations, you can send them directly to them if that's what you want to do, and diddly-diddly-dee. So then I get the codes and I circulate to them, and then we've got to make sure everyone's actually, knows how to install the code, because it's one of those Windows 10, you need to use, the Xbox app in the Windows Store to redeem the code, because that's how the game works. I need to make sure I know how everyone's actually playing, and then when the day comes, you've got to actually sort of the tech problems. So, I was there an hour before we were actually supposed to start recording, purely so we could set up, how we communicate, and then we needed to quickly figure out how we're going to record this, because, for example, we all wanted to record our local game visuals, but we couldn't just record the audio coming out of our computers because we were communicating via TeamSpeak, but if you're communicating via TeamSpeak and you just set, say, Shadowplay or some other recording software going, it would pick up the game audio, but it would also pick up everyone else's voices, meaning that, yeah, it would be a bit of a mess in the audio. So therefore, we needed to find a way to run TeamSpeak through different computers. So in my case, I was literally running a laptop behind me, which was how TeamSpeak was running, and I was just capturing the game audio through my computer, and a different computer behind me was running TeamSpeak. We needed to make sure everyone was actually set up correctly. Someone would actually have problems. We needed to get everyone in the same session. Then we need to sit down and actually record the thing. That takes about 4 hours. Then once it's recorded, because I wanted to do a big, complicated, multi-perspective thing where I kept flicking between different people's perspectives, that meant I needed to get hold of everyone else's footage. So that meant I needed to basically take out a paid Dropbox account and basically say, guys, just kind of send that over to me. And in the end, we also kind of used the NerdCube Dropbox as like an intermediary step for some people, and then it got a little bit confusing, and different people's internets at different speeds. So up is not jumps. Matt's visuals came to me like a day later than everyone else's, just because he didn't have the fastest of super fast internet, so it took him a bit longer to actually upload that. And then came the editing. The editing, oh my god. So the editing, that took, I think that was a full day. I think that was a full day's work to make those two videos that were about, I think one was 21 minutes, one was 28 minutes. So that was another full day. And basically, it was pretty much a full day just in terms of the actual recording, because being there early, then 4 hours recording, and then kind of doing all the after stuff, making sure everyone's sending me all the footage and whatever, and that's all working. So basically, those two videos took 2 full days to make, not counting any of like the pre-set up stuff and the diary arranging and afterwards. So they were a lot of work. They were a lot of work. I was really happy with how they turned out, but blimey to collaborations, especially with 3 people, especially when you want to do multi-perspective stuff with the edit. That really, really takes a lot of time. But I just wanted to kind of share that, because it's something I don't really kind of talk about a lot, and it's not something I do a lot. But yeah, it's a fun, interesting process, but it's quite a lot of work. Anyway, let's dive into the questions. We will start off with the oldest ones today and work up to the newest. Why not? Have you ever played Europa Universalis 4? No, I've heard a lot about it. And as I think as I've mentioned before, Paradox is sneaking up my to-do list. I'm feeling like at some point this year, I will actually do Crusader Kings 2. I don't know whether as like a live stream series or as like a series. I'm feeling like... yeah, actually, I think maybe I might be able to... depends on timings. Like, in theory, Stellaris Apocalypse will hopefully end in time for me to do Thrones of Britannia. Thrones of Britannia I don't think will be particularly long, because it's one of the Saga games, so it's not supposed to be that long. Then there might be a good gap for Crusader Kings 2. That could be a really good spot for Crusader Kings 2, which then hopefully might be done in time for Total War 3 Kingdoms to come out later in the year. That's vaguely how I'm seeing the strategy game layout for the rest of this year going. Like, all of that subject to change, that's just vaguely what I'm thinking right now. As for Europa Universalis 4, that would logically follow Crusader Kings 2 if Crusader Kings 2 actually does well. If, like, no one's that interested in it and, like, the viewership really drops off and it's not deemed to be, like, a good popular series, that kind of would reduce the chance of ever seeing Europa Universalis. On the topic of toast toppings, what's your opinion on Vegemite? Now, I was actually a bit confused about this one. I had to go and do some research, because I wasn't quite sure what the difference between Vegemite and Marmite is, because they both look like they're identical, and they both seem to just be yeast extract, which doesn't sound like the most tempting thing in the world. And as far as I can tell, they're either very similar or the same thing repackaged. I wasn't sure, but like there seemed to be a bunch of articles, oh, can you tell the difference between Vegemite and Marmite? So I think they're incredibly similar. So I'm just going to assume that I can talk about Marmite here, because I've never actually tried Vegemite. I am not a Marmite fan, so I'm going to work under the assumption I wouldn't be a Vegemite fan. Sorry. John, you've mentioned you're a big dog person. I'm wondering if there are any plans for many a true dog in the future. There is. In fact, pretty much all financial planning I ever undertake is just kind of slowly leading towards a dog, because right now we don't have access to a garden. So it wouldn't really be fair for us to have a dog. The reason we have Tabby is because Tabby was a slightly older adopted rescue cat, and she'd basically been living as a stray for 2 years, and now like has literally no interest in the outside. She just wants to be inside because she spent 2 years on the street. So... you know, she's had enough outside for the rest of her life. So, like, you know, Tabby, I don't think I've ever seen her in the 3 years we've had her. She's never gone up onto a windowsill or looked outside. Like, her interest in the outside world is zero. She's never shown any interest in the doors. She's never, like, gone up and looked out of the window. She just wants to be inside and be comfy and be safe and sleep. That's all she wants to do. And occasionally play. She does kind of play very cutely on occasion. But she's an older cat, so she likes being inside and warm and sleepy, and that's pretty much it. But, you know, I don't think it's really fair to have an inside dog. I'm sure that's really a fair concept. So, we don't have a dog right now. Basically, like, I would like to move somewhere that has a garden in a few years' time. It's not happening soon. But in a few years' time, I'd love to move to a place that has at least a small garden or a bit of outside space, and that would be when I'd have a dog. So I really want a dog, and pretty much like all financial planning I ever do in my life is just leading towards that goal. That's kind of like the big goal for my life right now. One day, I'm going to be able to have a dog, and it's going to be beautiful. And the second part of the question is, indeed, I can see how this will be an issue with Tabby. Indeed it would be. And yeah, Tabby's 13. Tabby's 13 now, so I'm pretty sure I would not get a dog while Tabby was still with us. So I think Tabby is going to enjoy the rest of her retirement with us, quite possibly where we are now. And whenever Tabby is no longer with us, whether that's before or after we move, at that point, somewhere around there, we'll probably be moving to somewhere that has a garden. And our plan is to get like a kitten and a puppy at the same time, and then they'll grow up together, so they'll be friends, and neither of them will be scared by the introduction of the other, because they'll both kind of know each other from when they're very, very young indeed. So that's kind of the long-term plan for a dog. Obligatory reminder for Tabby pictures. Claire, insert the Tabby pictures. Yay, there's Tabby. Oh, she's probably doing something cute. The proper toast topping is neither jam nor honey, says Joseph Henderson. It is butter with sugar and garlic. Sugar and garlic? Like, garlic butter, I could agree with, and I suspect Claire would really agree with you, but I'm not really sure what sugar adds to that mix. That almost strikes me as a bit odd. Like, kind of sweet garlic. I'm not sure I get that, but maybe Claire would think that sounded amazing. I've been rewatching some old videos lately. I was wondering if there's any possibility of Fear Equation coming back, possibly as a live stream. Really enjoyed those videos. It seems you did too. I did actually. Fear Equation was a good game. Let's actually just kind of dive into the analytics quickly, see how well that video did. It's certainly got quite a few views. First part 64,000 by the end, which was part 6. Kind of mid 20,000, which is a little bit of a steep drop off, but nothing too unpredictable. The problem is, as far as I'm aware, they never actually released any DLC for it. Hang on, I'll check that too. No, they didn't, and that's kind of a bit of an issue, because, yeah, for me, like, I often nip back into a game if they've added something new, so there's nothing new in it now I haven't already seen, which is a bit of a shame. Instead, they moved straight on to their next project, which was Safe House Diaries 2, which I have also actually played as well, which is kind of cool. Like, I actually enjoyed that, though that didn't do as well on the channel, and there's the original Safe House Diaries. I think that was actually published by someone else and doesn't seem to have been as well regarded. Yeah, Safe House Diaries 2 has actually got very positive reviews. The original Safe House Diaries has actually got mixed reviews, so it doesn't seem to be particularly popular. There is actually a third game here I hadn't seen before that looks very similar, Dead Note, which is reviewed positively, if not very positively. Okay. Fear Equation might not be coming back, but it might have inspired me to give it a look-see to another similar game. So yeah, I might give a look-see to Dead Note at some point. Claire, add it to the long list. John, talking of collabs on Twitch, he recently brought up the Runaway Guys. I do like the Runaway Guys. I just love their Mario Party videos. They're just marvellous. And I wonder if you'd ever do a collab with them. I would love to. The problem is, I'm pretty sure all of them do their collabs by literally driving to one place. Because, like, in the Mario Party videos, you hear them talking about, say, the hotel they're staying in. So they literally all travel at a hotel, presumably during a convention, I would guess, and they actually record the collabs while they're at the hotel together. Or alternatively, they mention they're at somebody's house because they mention their cats in the background. So it's clear they actually come into one place to locally record them. They don't really do much in the way of online. And most of the older Nintendo games they like playing together didn't really have online functionality. You can't play over the internet with them. So unfortunately, I don't see it as likely to happen because, yeah, the chances of them all coming over to Britain or me travelling to America just for that are quite low. So I would dearly love to, if like, at some point some weird twist of conventions brought us into one place, I would absolutely love to do something with those guys. They're hilarious, but tragically it seems not likely to happen. John, have you ever considered playing Stellaris as a fanatical purifier? I have indeed played Stellaris as a fanatical purifier, just kind of in the background on my own time. Honestly, I don't particularly enjoy doing Stellaris as just a straight up let's eat everything game, because pretty early on, basically, it's difficult at first because everyone hates you and everyone goes to war with you and everyone just basically wants to stop you. But after your, initial difficult period of being attacked from all sides and not being sure who to actually, well, when I say not sure who to work with, you don't really work with anyone. It's just a case of not being sure who's more or less likely to attack you at what point and trying to make your moves at the right point there. I find it quite dull, because it means you don't really get to take part in diplomacy, you don't really get the faction system, to be honest. You don't get as interesting selection of buildings, because plenty of buildings just kind of aren't really relevant to you. Your empire's not as interesting, because, anything else that kind of gets brought into your empire just gets destroyed in terms of, being purged or whatever kind of form of purging you choose to favour. I find it a bit dull, to be honest. I think if I wanted to play, as an evil, kill everything kind of faction, I'd probably go for, a militarist authoritarian kind of faction rather than actually kind of a fanatical purifier, because then at least you've got, the slavery mechanic, and that's a bit more interesting, because then you could actually go and, take over a particular group of people if you thought they'd be useful for a particular function. So, if your species wasn't very strong and thus wasn't very good at mining, you could go out and actually find another species that was very good and take over one of their planets. Or if you set yourself up as what's the new one that's good at abducting populations while they're bombarding a planet, I can't remember. Whichever that one is, you could do that and then basically, use that to get hold of one of them into your empire and then cause them to grow and spread them out across your empire. That's a bit more interesting to me. I find Fanatical Purifier pretty boring. It's the same reason, I don't like playing as the Killbot, the Determined Exterminators. The only robot class I really enjoy playing as is the Rogue Servitors. They're really interesting, and I enjoy playing as them, because they can actually kind of, communicate and have some friendly relationships with those around them. But I find the diplomacy and the politics and stuff and federations kind of one of the more fun things in Stellaris, which is why I almost always play as just kind of the moderate Xenophile civic. So I kind of like playing Stellaris more in that direction. John, how do you choose between highly demanded series of older games like Witcher, Stalker, Dragon Age in favour of games that you just stumbled across that are still in early versions? Very interesting question. Very interesting question. And this is kind of how I make my decisions there, is actually based on just my experience as a YouTuber, which is people don't always want what they think they want. And I generally have a pretty good instinct for that sort of thing. So, for example, when I did Witcher, people were saying, oh, John, you need to play The Witcher, you need to play The Witcher, you've got to play The Witcher. And, it was pretty clear that the people who were recommending it thought that it was going to be a huge series. So I thought, okay, I'm going to test the water with a midweek mini-series, which has the option to be extended if need be. So I did Witcher over 4 parts, and what I suspected would happen, which is, let's go over to the actual numbers here. Yeah, the first part, hugely successful. 61,000 views, that's a really solid first part. Part 2, 30,000 views. Now, if the second part of what might be a series has dropped over half its views from the first part, something's gone wrong there. That is not a series that's going to have legs. Part 3, 21,000. Part 4, 20,000. Now, only 20,000 viewers by Part 4, so down to under a third of what the first part had. That's incredibly worrying. Absolutely, people wanted to see The Witcher, but the number of people that actually wanted to see a series of The Witcher was very, very low indeed. At that point, we were down to pretty much the hardcore Witcher fans. And the thing is, you can't really sustain a series just off the back of the people who are fans of that franchise. If a series is going to be a series, it's got to kind of work with the way I play games and work with the community in general. So even people who are not massive fans of that franchise want to stick around and watch it. And I think that worked really nicely in Rome Total War and Medieval 2 Total War, because loads of people who were not big fans of the Total War franchise, like I saw loads of comments saying, I don't even play these games, but I really enjoy watching you play them. So people were really into that for that reason. I think the same's been kind of true for Skyrim. Lots of people who are just very casually into Skyrim, even if they're not like big fans of the Elder Scrolls full stop, have really enjoyed the series, because there's been a lot of interesting kind of fun little storytelling and role-playing going on in it. Whereas The Witcher, like, I think people were curious about The Witcher, but there weren't, like, enough people that wanted to hang around to watch it other than the fans. And that can't really work. The same sort of thing has happened a little bit with Stalker. Let me just get those numbers up. Yeah, same basic principle, arguably even worse. 50,000 on the first part, but right now part 3 only has like 15,000 views on it. And to be honest, I didn't have a great time with the Stalker community. Basically, my summation of the comments section under the first and second parts of the Stalker videos were, John, how dare you not know this thing that is at no point tutorialized or mentioned in the game? How dare you? Yeah, that wasn't exactly a friendly community. Some communities and fan bases are really open and receptive and really enjoy kind of, seeing people playing their games and getting kind of fresh eyes on a game. It's kind of an interesting alternative perspective of something they like. Some people who know a game very well are very dismissive and unfriendly when someone who doesn't know the game as well plays it. And Stalker is not new player friendly. It is not tutorialized at all. There's loads of stuff just in the world that the game doesn't make any effort to explain whatsoever. It plays by some of its own interesting, unique rules. If you want to be good at the game, it's clear. There's a certain particular playstyle a lot of people were recommending, but the game doesn't really do anything to recommend to you. But a lot of people were kind of, honestly a bit nasty, a bit unfriendly and unpleasant in the comments about that, and it didn't really inspire me to want to go back to it. And once again, the big drop-off in views makes me think that what was going on there was like, okay, loads of people were interested in seeing it because they've all heard of Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl, but by the time we hit part 3, we're down to the people that just like Shadow of Chernobyl, and they seem to just basically enjoy nothing more than yelling about how I was doing it wrong, which makes it a very unpleasant experience for me to play through. Because, you're constantly going on thinking, am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? I'm probably doing this wrong. It doesn't matter. I can try and learn this myself, but people have got no tolerance for me just kind of going along and wanting to try and learn a game by myself. Instead, there's just going to be kind of never-ending criticism in the comments, which made it not particularly a fun series for me to put out. But there we are, that's kind of how I picked that. It's a combination of, just an instinct on my part that generally is borne out, that some series I think have more legs than others. Some kind of games suit my style more than others. So even if they're regularly demanded, that might well be from a vocal minority. And in some cases, some games fan bases are not actually as interested in seeing a newbie play their game as they might think they are. Whereas games that are new and interesting and kind of in an early state, some of them can be very interesting, fun experiments. And because they're just one-offs, I can just kind of put together a video, throw it out, and we never have to see that game again. So often it's kind of easier to put together, fast to put together, and gets more views. So it entertains a larger number of people. So basically that's why. A bit of an in-depth answer, but that's kind of how it all fits together for me. And a follow-up question on that very point, a related question, more Witcher. Quite possibly a short Witcher 2 miniseries and a Witcher 3 miniseries. Based on the reaction to Witcher 1, I see no reason why Witcher 2 and Witcher 3 would be kind of received much differently. So as a result, I think we're looking at midweek miniseries more than anything else. And a perfect follow-up question as well, someone asking after Crisis 2 and 3. As I know nothing about them, they really feel like the sort of things that, again, might be midweek miniseries. I think they kind of fit into that mould very nicely. Good day, John. In your most recent Life is Strange series, you briefly mentioned The Land Before Time not aging well. Any chance of elaboration on this most controversial of controversial stances? Oof, I didn't realise that was going to be controversial. I just think there's nothing specifically wrong with Land Before Time. There is nothing specifically wrong with it. I can't point you at one bit and just say this doesn't work. I just think it's a little bit uninspiring next to lots of Disney franchises of a similar period. I think lots of older Disney films have aged very, very well indeed. I look back at Land Before Time now, I just find it a little bit uninteresting. I just do not find it particularly interesting. Whereas, like, you know, I think things like Aladdin and Lion King and Beauty and the Beast, the original, not the stupid idea of remaking the thing, I think those have aged very well and are still charming and well written, have really great songs in them and stuff. I personally think Land Before Time is just... I just think it's uninteresting. I don't think it's bad. I just don't think it's good either. Have you ever considered peanut butter? I think we're talking about the toast again there. Claire is a big fan of peanut butter. Me, not so much. Have you practiced any more with your Desert Bus ukulele? I don't even know where that is. Claire went and bought that from Argos just so we could do the joke during the Desert Bus VR video. That's how long that video took to make. Like, literally, we decided we wanted to do instruments. So I just gave Claire some money and basically said, go to Argos, buy me an instrument, find me like a ukulele or a recorder or something. And yeah, Claire came back with a ukulele and then I had a ukulele. I think it's in a cupboard somewhere now. I'm not sure I'm going to be a ukulele master at any point. John, I wanted your advice on something. I'm studying classics at A-level, which is my favourite subject, even replacing my love of history. However, I really dislike studying languages. If I take classics at uni, I have to learn Latin, while my A-level course does not have any language aspect. Should I take history at uni, or should I try and take classics? Now, this kind of depends what country you're in, because I don't know what country I'm. Say in America, if I understand this correctly, like, it's easier to do, like, what is it you call, like, major and minor. So at that point, because you can do a bit more of a varied degree, at that point, probably it would be easy to do something that was like a minor in classical civilizations or classical history, or a module of history focusing on the ancient world, as something of that nature, while doing history as a major. If you're in a country that has, like, more specialised degree courses like we have in the UK, where you have to pick one thing, then it's a bit more difficult. Now, if you actually really love classics, then, you know, my view has always been, do what you're passionate about, because if you can get into a good uni and get a good degree from it, even if it's in a fairly impractical thing, that's for the better. So going for the thing you're most passionate about is probably a good idea in that regard. What I would suggest is you probably want to try and do a little bit of basic Latin learning as soon as possible, because you need to figure out whether you've got an aptitude for it and whether you actually enjoy learning Latin. Because if when you say you dislike studying languages, you mean you've disliked studying modern languages, like you've studied French and German at school and you didn't enjoy them. Like, I always found the difference between learning a living language, like French or German or whatever, and kind of learning how to read and interpret a dead language like Latin and Greek were very different to me. Like, I didn't enjoy learning French when I was at school. Wasn't very good at it, but was very good at Latin. They're very different. So I think, like, the first important thing that you can do is you need to do a little bit of basic Latin as soon as possible to figure out whether you have, the desire and the aptitude to learn it. Because if you look at it and feel this is exactly the same way I feel about studying modern languages, then it's going to be difficult for you to learn it while you're at university. That's going to be a difficult thing to do. There might also be classics courses that are focusing on classical history that involve just studying translated primary sources where you're not actually reading the original. I don't know that for certain. That's just an estimate. I would be very surprised if there wasn't a classical history degree somewhere in the UK that didn't involve actually reading primary sources in their original. But that is just an estimate. But hopefully that gives you a starting point to work from. John, what are your plans for XCOM? Well, I think actually XCOM 1 doesn't feel like a massively long game. I think I'm kind of starting to vaguely move towards the end at this point. I'm definitely up to the higher tiers of tech. So pretty soon we're actually going to start advancing the main plot, would you believe? So at that point I imagine we're going to make pretty fast progress. My understanding is, the enemy within expansion wasn't really an expansion. It was just like a layer of stuff over the top of XCOM 1, which is why I didn't include it immediately, because XCOM was totally new to me, so I feel like I didn't want to kind of have a whole bunch of new stuff that was added in to add more content for experienced players. When I was an experienced player, I was a total newbie. And I've had enough problems getting to grips with the XCOM basics. There's been a weird little kind of two-sided thing going on in the comments of XCOM, which is the same group of people seem to simultaneously yell, John, you're totally misunderstanding XCOM. How are you getting some of these basics wrong? I can't believe you don't get this. And John, I can't believe you're not playing with Enemy Within. I can't believe you haven't made the game twice as complicated and added a bunch of new complicated systems into it. And these two people don't seem to see that these two things are pretty much contradictory positions. But there we are. I'm pretty happy with how I did it. What I'm thinking I might do is, after XCOM's done, I might do, like, just for fun, either XCOM Enemy Within at max difficulty, just as like a permadeath, just to see how long I can last, or alternatively, XCOM download, what's it called? The Longest War, the Long War, whatever that one is. The mod that makes it super hardcore, and do that as like a live stream to see how long I can survive for. It's kind of the plan. That's kind of a plan. So that'll just be a fun little follow-up series. Then we'll have a gap. Where either we'll do something else on Friday, or Friday can just be one-offs for a bit. But absolutely, I do want to dive into XCOM 2. And when we go into XCOM 2, I do have all of the DLC already. I own XCOM 2, I own all the DLC. I think I've got all the DLC. I'll double check, but I've definitely got most of the DLC. I think I've got all of it. So we'll go into XCOM 2 at some point, and I'll probably start it on not the very hardest difficulty, but not normal either. I'll go up to, like, if there is like a hard and very hard, I'll go for hard. Because I don't know XCOM 2, and I understand it's changed quite a bit. But there'll also be things I'm familiar with, having played quite a lot of the original now, so I feel like whatever the equivalent of, like, hard is, that will be a good difficulty level to go for. John, should I go to St. Bernard or a Newfoundland? I love big dogs. I can't decide. Oh, I've always loved the Newfoundland. They always look so fun to hug. I'd go for a Newfoundland just because they do look fun to hug. They look so soft and lovely. What do you think modern consoles are lacking and should add on in the next generation whenever that comes? I think the big thing that really bugs me about consoles, and the reason why it really bothers me every time I turn the console is, well, mainly actually, it all boils down to one thing. And that is the network. And this is why, like, if I have to choose between playing on PS4 and Xbox One, I will always go for the Xbox One. Because Microsoft's, like, network for downloading games, however they do that, seems to work pretty kind of fast. It's pretty efficient. And the Xbox One doesn't seem to be constantly begging for updates. And when it does update, it updates pretty fast. Like just the other night, I wanted to record a little bit of footage of GTA 5 for a video, and basically, in order to do that, it took me 45 minutes after I started trying to do that to do it. Because I turned on the PS4 and the PS4 was like, no, I need to update now. It tried to update, it downloaded the update. The update was only 500 megabytes, but it still took 8 minutes, which is ludicrously slow. Like, my internet is so much faster than that, so it's the PlayStation Network that was the bottleneck there. Then it crashed. So I had to unplug it and plug it back in. Then it had the gall to actually moan at me for unplugging it, saying, oh, you didn't shut me down. Well, you crashed. It was your bloody fault. So I turned it back on again, and then basically decided it needed to download that again. So that was another 8 minutes or so. Then after it had downloaded that, it said, okay, now preparing to install. Not install, preparing to install. That took about 12 minutes, and I'm not sure what the difference between preparing to install and install is. So then it decided it needed to restart. Then I turned it back on again, and then it installed, which was fine. It was ridiculous. Then I needed to restart again afterwards because all my games refused to start after I installed the new version, which was great. Then finally, after a bit more faffing, GTA 5 was willing to actually start, which was just marvellous. It was just marvellous. I was so glad that all happened. So, yeah, frankly, it's the download speeds, which are just embarrassing. Like, it doesn't even matter what service you're using on PC, like whether I'm using Steam or Uplay or Origin, like I'm using the same cable because like I don't do anything wireless when I'm doing that. I always just, I have some Ethernet cables running through from the actual router modem, whatever. So I always use the same cable. So like I know the problem isn't my internet, it's not the cable because I'm always using the same thing. Like it's embarrassing how much faster I can download games on PC compared to console. The Xbox One is not bad. But PS4 is a nightmare, and like literally the speed of the PSN is why I do not use my PS4 for anything. It just sort of sits there collecting dust. How much organisational work goes into making a collab? Oh, I'm so glad I answered that earlier. Marvellous. What's next for you in terms of innovating your style and way of going about doing your videos and series? Ooh, interesting question. New weekday slots, old series you'd like to bring back, editing changes you're thinking of doing. I'm not planning on making any major editing changes to style soon. Like, I think on an ongoing basis, I make my editing a bit neater and a bit tighter. Like, I can go back and watch stuff that's from only a year ago and think that's a bit scruffy. I don't agree with that cut. I'd have made that a bit smoother. So the editing is an ongoing process of slow improvements. In terms of old series I'd like to come back, for the most part, I don't generally bring back things. I think once something's done, for the most part, it's done. I don't really like redoing things for the most part. In terms of weekday slots, I think possibly, like, at some point, I might for a bit convert Friday away from being a series day into being just a one-off day. Because right now, we do quite a lot. We're doing like 13 or 14 videos a week and a live stream. Now, as I'm the one that, like, records all the videos, though, of course, I have Claire's help to do some of the editing, that's quite a lot. And sometimes it leaves us a little bit close to the wire. Like, I'm working into the evening the day before to finish off and have videos ready for the day after. And I think sometimes we also do maybe a few too many series. Like, I think maybe we're a little series heavy right now. With kind of, Skyrim with 2 parts, Stellaris with 2 parts, XCOM with 1 part, and Fallout with 1 part. So 6 videos a week are series stuff, and also there's things like, the live stream will get, sometimes it gets highlights, sometimes it just gets posted. So I think that's maybe a little bit too much, and I'd like to maybe try easing back on one of those series. I think it's possibly Friday that's going to get eased back on, and just try having a few more one-offs, which is nice. I mean, the most recent innovation has been trying to do a few more midweek miniseries, which I think work well for the sorts of games I was discussing earlier, where, like, they're frequently demanded, but literally if you just look at, like, how it does over the first 3 or 4 parts, you can tell that, like, it's already lost a lot of viewership, and if I were to do the whole game and extend that out to 50 parts, by the end, like, very few people will be watching. And that's a waste. That's not really a waste because of views, because these days views don't really mean anything on YouTube, to be honest. Like, views are pretty much pointless. Like, videos get randomly and demonetized, and YouTube Red has no bearing on ads, and Patreon represents a bigger contribution than any of that anyway. So views don't really matter. For me, views are only a metric about how many people are actually getting entertained and seeing a video they want to see on a given night. It's like, if I put out part 47 of a series, and that series is being watched by only, like, say, if it dropped below 10,000 people, then that's a lot of people who, like, if I'd put out a one-off in that spot instead, maybe I would have actually given 50,000 people something to watch that evening as opposed to 10,000. So I think maybe we could do a few more one-offs and slightly less series, but I'm still thinking about the best way to make that work. John, can I get a happy birthday? Yes, NB Brit, you can get a happy birthday. Happy birthday, NB Brit. But unfortunately, it's probably not your birthday anymore because that was technically actually submitted a few days ago. So the chance of actually being your birthday today is a bit low. But, like, happy birthday for when it was your birthday, and happy birthday for next year in advance. I'm getting in early. What are some lesser-known games that you think people should try? I've always been a cheerleader for Curious Expedition. I still hold the Curious Expedition is a fantastic little game, and it never really achieved, like, massive appeal. I understand it's gone pretty well, and, it's sold well enough, and they're continuing to support it. I think it's a spectacular little game, well worth a look. John, do you think it's possible in the current era of YouTube for someone to make a success of a channel doing only Let's Play type videos? Interesting question, because I assume what you mean by Let's Play type videos is like long form multi-series content, which, appropriately enough, I was literally just discussing a few parts ago. Yeah, not many people watch that. Maybe I should move away from it. So, that sounds like my answer to this question is going to be, no, it's a terrible idea. I think they've got a place. I think they've got a place because if you do it in an interesting, different way, I still think it can work. I agree, just a straight, blank, just kind of, like, here's the game. So, if someone just does... Actually, no offense. If someone just does a Let's Play with no commentary, and it's literally just going through the game as quickly and efficiently as possible and letting all the cutscenes play without commentary, that can have a purpose. If I just want to see what a game is like, and I just want to kind of skim through it and just kind of get a feel for it, that can sometimes be useful. I've looked up stuff like that before. But if it is just a fairly slow, generic, yep, I'm new to this game, we're just going to learn it as we go along, diddly-diddly-dee, I agree. That's probably not a good idea for growth. What that is good for is for when you've got an established audience. Because when you've got a community that already knows they like you and knows they kind of like your take on things and wants to watch you playing games, at that point, a long Let's Play series can be really nice. It can be a really good, cool, relaxing thing. Like, for example, I absolutely love Chugga Conroy's playthrough of Xenoblade Chronicles, which I think is a very, very good game. And that had, I think that was over 100 parts. In fact, I'm pretty certain that was about 110, 115 parts total. And I watched that. I watched that all the way through. In fact, I've watched it through twice. I love that series. It's a fantastic little series. So it can absolutely work, but I think it's not a good way to grow. Absolutely. Like, the follow-up point to this question was, many channels these days seem to be heading down the route of doing tips or guides to draw an audience and then doing Let's Play videos less frequently. And yeah, I think that's true, because for the most part, people are probably going to be drawn into the channel by looking for tips and guides. And it's a good way to get views. The problem is converting those people, because someone who just kind of shows up to your channel and just kind of watches a guide, okay, hey, you're looking for the 3 rubber duckies that live in the kitchen level, here's where they're hidden, that's fine. But a person who comes to that has come because they want to know where the rubber duckies are, and once they know where the rubber duckies are, they'll close the window and go away. Like, they've got no reason to subscribe. And they've got no reason to stick around and look at your other stuff. And they've got no reason to see what else you've made. And they've got no reason to come and check out your live streams or whatever. So you might be able to get views that way, but you might not be able to get subscribers that way. So it's a good, easy way to get views. But is it a good way to build a YouTube community? I don't know. I think, Let's Play still have a role and can even still get attention if you're kind of doing a good niche, for example. Like, when I was a very small new channel, I did a Let's Play series, effectively, of Thief. The new Thief, the one that came out in, 2013, which was terrible. And I kind of just gave it a twist. So what I did was I was going for the moral victory achievement, where you don't kill or knock out anybody in the entire game. I'm pretty sure the rules. That was a terrible game. I hated it. It was so awful. Though possibly it was partly frustrating because they weren't expecting you to try and do moral victory as the first thing you did. If you just kind of played through the game normally and killed some people, it would have been less frustrating. So I might have actually kind of, slightly ruined that one for myself. I don't know. And say Skyrim is technically just, for me, it's just a standard Let's Play format. But I've kind of tried to mix in storytelling and role-playing. I think that's what I'm good at. I'm good at storytelling and role-playing in a game. And I think that's what's made Skyrim work for people. So there's absolutely ways you can just slightly freshen up the old Let's Play format to still work, I'd say. Ooh, we're back to the toast now. Someone suggesting that, if they could get some bacon and some scrambled eggs, they could make a toast wedge. Yeah, that's my favourite suggestion so far. 2 bits of toast with some bacon and eggs in the middle. Oh, yeah. John, were you expecting Skyrim to be as long as engaging as it is when you first started the series? No. I had no idea what I was going to do. Like, I assumed it was going to be like a challenge run, and the first few parts do effectively function as a challenge run, and then as time went by, I figured out it worked better as kind of like a narrative and a role-playing run. Then I came up with the massive flipping long Benor plot that was completely out of nowhere, because there was supposed to be, I was planning to running joke where a different companion was killed every part or every other part or something. Then I just ran into Benor and thought, I could do something with this. And then 100 parts happened. So no, that was a bit of a kind of a pleasant surprise as I went along. What is the most bizarre thing you've done in 3 words without context? Ooh, I had to think about this one. Then I thought about something potentially relevant. And, well, you requested no context. So I'm going to go with not the chandelier. Yeah, that's true. There's a hell of a story behind that, but you're never hearing it. Oh, no. Are you looking forward to admiring Benor in VR? I'm very much looking forward to Skyrim in VR. In fact, actually, Bethesda have already sent me code, but it's not early access code. So I only get to play it at the same time as everyone else, unfortunately. But I am very much looking forward to it. I will put together a little mini-series for that. Now that Benor Saga is done, do you have any plans for Benor that you wanted to do but didn't end up doing because of the community reaction? None of it was really due to the community reaction, to be honest. As I was saying, the original plan for him was just for him to be killed, probably in the vampire lair, the same actual day as I picked him up. But No matter, it just kind of extended onwards. Like, I slightly rejigged it. Like, I wanted the end of the Benno arc to actually be on part 100, but, like, I could tell actually, like, just because I decided to try and bring some of the companion stuff in earlier, like, it was getting a little bit stretched out, so I ended it a few parts earlier than that. But yeah, I would have liked it to be on part 100, where we actually got to the end of the main plot and also wrapped up the Benno arc properly on 99 into 100. But tragically, it didn't quite work out that way because, yeah, it kind of needs to be wrapped up a little bit earlier than that. What's your take on Star Wars Battlefront 2 update with the removal of the loot crates? It's good. It's a good bit of progress, not really so much for Star Wars Battlefront 2 itself, but for the gaming industry in general, that there's now been enough of a backlash that people who did originally have loot crates have now started taking them out. Admittedly, they're just being replaced with, like, you know, microtransactions, which is still a little bit on the scummy side, but it's better than it was, and I think it reflects well in the way gaming will hopefully go in 2018 onwards. So hopefully this means less games will have loot crates now, and more will just go back to normal microtransactions, and I feel kind of a bit depressed that that is now the best we can hope for. Oh good, just microtransactions, marvellous! As you often get your games for free and play so many games for your channel, do you worry this may give you a completely different perspective than most gamers on the quality of the games that you play? Yes, actually. It is something I do think about, but there's not really much I can do to fix it. Because, absolutely, I do try and, like, check what a game costs and try and figure that in. Because some games come out a little bit cheaper and some games come out at full price. Like, you know, when we were discussing Sea of Thieves at the end of that video, we did go and check what its retail price was. And we agreed that, yeah, for its price, that was a really, really poor value at the moment. Like, part of the problem for pretty much any YouTuber is going to be, we, for the most part, don't actually finish games. Like, my Steam library is littered with unfinished games. Like, huge numbers of games where I've played about 3 or 4 hours and then never again. Because simply, like, you know, I can't actually finish every game. Because if I wanted to finish a game before I could make a video about it, then a game could easily take 20 to 30 hours. So if I was to actually record for 20 to 30 hours and then pick my favourite bits out of those 20 to 30 hours, put those into videos, that's going to be another 20 to 30 hours of editing, and then kind of, you know, actually put together my thoughts there and conclude properly, we're basically talking about a full week's work there, which is fine. Some people do that. So, for example, I imagine that's pretty much why Zero Punctuation is once a week, because Yahtzee has to play through a full game. Sometimes, you know, he does admit he hasn't actually played the whole thing, but very often he plays a lot more of it than I would play, and then puts together his thoughts on it, and then puts together the video. So I understand why that's once a week. So if I was to actually do a video where I kind of actually played through the whole game, yeah, you'd get a lot less videos. Or every single game I covered like that would have to be a full series, broken out into multiple parts. And then, like, you know, what if, like, halfway through I decide, actually, I'm not really enjoying this game that much? Do we just have lots of series just sort of end? Do I then just kind of start something new? What happens if, like, you know, 3 different decent games are coming out in the same week? How do we make that work? Like, there's not really a great solution to that problem. Like, I try and stay aware of what a game's price is and try and factor that in and mention it if I think it's worthy of note. Length of a game is something I'm unable to tell, because very often I actually get a game just before it comes out. So the only thing I have in terms of how long the game is what I've been told by the dev or the publisher. Because very often they'll send over like a little fact sheet with the game saying, yeah, okay, fine, you know, we're aiming for a campaign with 20 plus hours of content in it or something. So I can vaguely estimate on that basis. But yeah, it is tricky. It is tricky, and I try and measure my criticism accordingly. This is why I very often will not kind of overtly say, this is a good game versus this is a bad game. I try and always kind of phrase my point when I'm summarising a game as, this is my experience based on the first 4 hours. So, like, you know, I tend not to say game's good, I tend to say, I'm impressed, this is promising, versus, I haven't had a good time, and I don't personally want to play any further. So I try not to make, like, judgments about the whole game, but you're absolutely right that, like, I do have a different perspective on grounds that I'll only play for a few hours so I don't get the full picture, and I probably could do more. I think any YouTuber could almost certainly do more to kind of appreciate the price of a game. And we do try and kind of, get that fitted in, just like we did with Sea of Thieves, where I think it's actually relevant. But you're right, it is a concern. It's something I do try and stay aware of. Reflecting on when you went to university, what was one skill or life lesson you learned at university that you still use to this day? Probably two more than anything else, because, as someone who studied classics, I appreciate hugely that the actual stuff you learn at university, for the vast majority of people, will not be useful. Unless you're actually going into, a vocational career based on a very specifically vocational degree, you're not going to actually use the specific stuff you learned at university, and I certainly don't. It's good at pub quizzes, that's about it. But I think university is useful for learning how to learn intensively. So I learnt a lot about time management, and I learnt a lot about learning new stuff quickly. Because the course that I did, which was Classics at Oxford, was basically you had multiple essays due every week. And you were basically given a topic on which, people have dedicated their lives and written full books on. Your readings could be 10 or 20 sections of long-ass books, obscure books. So you would basically go around and you'd have to become an expert in something and be capable of arguing with people who, dedicated their lives to studying things and written papers on it. And very often, the tutor who I would go and have the tutorial with would actually be a person who'd written a book on this. And I'd have to read out my essay to him and actually argue and debate the points with him. So you needed to get very, very good at learning things very, very quickly. And part of that is, part of it's just about learning how to absorb information. Part of it is learning how to bullshit. And that's, I think, a very important part of being a good student. You've got to be able to learn how to confidently put forward your opinion and confidently argue and confidently debate your viewpoint, even knowing that your perspective might not be perfect and the information you have might not be complete. Because no one is ever going to know absolutely everything on any topic reasonably. So as a result, you've just got to have a bit of self-confidence in yourself and just kind of go, you know what? I'm a pretty smart person. I can figure this out. I can go and I can argue this confidently. And that also kind of feeds into time management, which is you have to be very good at managing your own time, where I was, because you needed to do a lot of reading and a lot of writing, a lot of preparation, a lot of revising, but you also wanted to have a good time. So, I went to a lot of house parties and did a lot of fun stuff when I was at university as well. And kind of managing your time like that, especially when they're short terms, because the terms at Oxford are 8 weeks. You're literally only there for about 24 weeks a year, maybe a tiny bit more if you go a bit early or you stay half a week afterwards or whatever. But you're only actually at university on campus for 24 weeks a year at Oxford. So you've got to get really, really damn good at managing your time while you're there. What's the one thing you regret regarding your YouTube career? It's probably a very good sign. I really had to stop and think about this for a while. It's good. It's a very good sign. Probably literally the only thing, and this is kind of a very positive negative, is I didn't start it early enough. If I'd got in a few years earlier, I might have been able to kind of, get in while YouTube was a little bit quieter than it is today. And maybe now I'd be a lot further along. But then equally, maybe a few years before I started doing it, maybe I'm not the same person I was when I started it. Maybe the stuff I'd made wouldn't have been as good. Maybe it wouldn't have been the right time. You know what? I can't really even say that, because the way we did it, through some combination of luck or skill or whatever, we've got where we are today. Had I done it a few years earlier, maybe the circumstances wouldn't have been right for that to happen. So I can't even say that. But no, I do kind of wonder what would have happened if the very first time I'd thought, ooh, this YouTube thing looks fun. Maybe I should give that a go, which was, I think, about 2 years before I actually began. If I'd have kind of started then, where would we be now? But you can't know, and we're doing just fine, so it's fine. John, any plans to play more board games on the channel? I loved Fallout board game and Carcassonne. Yes, we actually have code for a different board game that we've played before with an actual board game we actually own, and we've got it here on Steam ready to go. So it's just a question of me and Claire actually bothering to sit down and give ourselves a quick refresher course on the rules, and then we can record something new for you. So yes, more stuff coming up soon. John, out of the videos that you've released in the past 6 months, which would you say has been your favourite, least favourite, and most successful? Ooh, my favourite's probably Sea of Thieves, just because when a good collab works well, it's just wonderful, it's magic. Most successful, hang on, I actually got the data up ready for this. Most successful is actually the first part of Fallout 4 Frost, which in the past 6 months has got about 300,000 views. That is actually the most viewed thing there. Now, my least favourite, ooh, I'll need to actually skim over that, see if I can find something I didn't actually like after I made it. Nothing massively stands out. Sometimes I make a video and just think, yeah, that's fine, but it's not great. I don't think anyone will remember it. They're just sort of there. It's a perfectly well put together video, but there's no moment in it I think, oh yeah, that's going to make a really good moment people might remember. So like a couple of videos I just saw just kind of skimming over the last 6 months that kind of were like that were Fields of Glory 2, which was a perfectly decent video. I just think it didn't have any kind of big, really awesome moment to it. And Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, which again was a perfectly fine video. It's just a game I didn't really click with. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. And it just kind of sits uncomfortably with that middle bit where I don't have anything kind of like really snarky and mean to say to it, but I don't want to praise it either. It's just sort of a game that's sort of okay. Like, there were some okay moments in that, but I think those are just kind of two forgettable videos. And I hate forgettable videos just because they kind of feel a bit on the pointless side. So those would probably be the two least favourite. A recommendation for Witcher 3? Yeah, Witcher 3 actually. Going back to what I was saying earlier, like Witcher 2 will definitely be like a midweek miniseries at some point, but Witcher 3 might have a chance of being like a series, or at least an ongoing series where I might draw a line under it at some point, like when I reach a major plot point or something after kind of a major encounter or something. We'll see. Witcher 3 certainly has a better chance of being an actual full series than the other two. How's you, Claire and Tabby? Well, better than we were. We've had a just kind of, cold circulating a little bit. So we're certainly better than we were. Tabby never had a cold, though. I think we saw her sneeze at one point. As far as we're aware, she doesn't have a cold. Instead, she's just kind of curled up in a little ball of fluff, so she's lovely. When am I going to EGX Rest? I don't know. I've got the ticket sorted out, but I've got like the press pass that lets me go any day. I haven't decided exactly when I'm going yet. Skyrim is a great series. Oh, thank you. Watching you play the DLC is brilliant as it's all new to you. Do you think you will explore the whole island? Yes, I'm pretty sure I will. Like, I really want to explore everything in Dragonborn, because, like, the thing that I really love about Dragonborn is nothing feels empty or pointless, and I think that's particularly good, because, like, if you compare it as, like a Bethesda open-worldy thing to Skyrim or Fallout 4, as much as I love Skyrim and Fallout 4, there are quite a few locations in both of those games where, like, you go into them, and there might be a little bit of okay loot. And Fallout 4, that's mitigated because, like, junk is really important in Fallout 4, which is why I think, actually, one of the things Fallout 4 does amazingly well, which is everywhere feels, like, worth going into, just because, like, finding the odd fan or typewriter or whatever is really, really, really damn useful. Whereas in Skyrim, a lot of areas don't have much in them, they just feel a little bit pointless. But for me, Dragonborn feels it gets around that because loads of areas, even like little areas, have fun, interesting, unique-ish things going on in them. So I really, really enjoyed that. Do you like the TV show Friends? I watched it a bit when I was younger. Like, I know it recently reappeared on, what was it? Did it move over to Netflix? In which case, like, I didn't really kind of rewatch any of it since then, so I know there was a bit of a backlash and some people were saying, oh no, it's aged terribly. I can't comment on that, I haven't really watched it. Like, I wasn't a massive fan of Friends in the first place. Like, for me, it was like perfectly okay background viewing, but it was one of my sisters who was really into Friends. She's got like the full DVD box set or whatever. So as a result, yeah, like, it's okay, but I wouldn't exactly call myself a fan. Which DLC do I like more in Skyrim, Dragonborn or Dawnguard? Oh, totally Dragonborn. Dragonborn's blown me away. Dawnguard is okay, but it's a bit short, and especially, like, the Radiant quests that the vampires gave me, some of them were a little bit on the uninteresting side. Do you like Easter eggs? Which is your favourite? I'm not sure whether you're talking about actual Easter eggs here, or, like, Easter eggs in games. I'm going to assume actual Easter eggs because it's close to Easter. In which case, I'm going to say I do like twirls. Twirl's good. Like, I'm just a chocolate pleb. Claire's not going to like this answer at all. I'm just a chocolate pleb. I just really like Cadbury's milk chocolates. Alright, so just give me a nice Cadbury's milk chocolate egg with just like some crunchies or some twirls or whatever. Actually, those probably aren't Cadbury's, are they? Those are probably both Nestle, I don't know. Anyway, just give me some crunchies or twirls, I'll be happy. And also wish you a happy birthday because you're going to be 21. Happy birthday, Rowena White! There you go. I wanted to know, what are your and Claire's favourite wild animals, i.e. animals that aren't usually kept as pets? I have a particular fondness for hippopotamuses and also duck-billed platypuses, because hippos are just cute. I know they're utterly vicious killers, but that's also kind of why I like them, because they're kind of, they're not the sort of animal at a glance you'd expect to be a vicious killer, but they are. And duck-billed platypuses, because once again, they just look a bit weird, but yeah, I know they've got like little kind of toxic claw things hidden away. So yeah, they're vicious little bastards, even though you wouldn't think of it. So I'm going to say those two things. Over to Claire.
I really love big cats. I love how much they behave like domesticated cats, or I guess how much domesticated cats still behave like wild big cats. Like, one of my favorite things to do to cheer myself up if I'm ever having a bad day is check out videos of lions or tigers interacting with cardboard boxes or playing with each other like kittens. It's just so cute.
Which cast member from Firefly Serenity would you say has had the best career since? I'd probably just have to say Nathan Fillion, just because while I'm not actually a massive fan myself, I've just seen a few episodes in the background. Claire's always been a big fan of Castle, and though I've not watched the whole thing through, I've watched a couple of episodes she's been watching, and I've always thought it seemed well put together and I've enjoyed it. So I guess I just have to say Nathan Fillion as a result. And related, Inara or Saffron? Well, it's in choosing the characters. Inara every time. Sorry, who chooses Saffron in that situation? She will murder you. Do you collect anything beside the board games you've already shown us? I wouldn't actually say I collected coasters, but I like having lots of cool coasters floating around, so possibly coasters. Mainly just board games and coasters. Blimey, I'm boring. John, which of the Mass Effect games has your favourite soundtrack? Ooh, not a desperately hard question for me, to be honest. Mass Effect 1 has an amazing soundtrack, but it is pipped to the post by Mass Effect 2. Now, I think actually overall, Mass Effect 1 has more good tracks. Mass Effect 2, however, has a small number of great tracks. So I'm going to give it to Mass Effect 2, because Mass Effect 3, to my mind, didn't really add anything particularly great on to Mass Effect 2. Like, the best tracks in Mass Effect 3 were the ones they borrowed and re-jazzed up from Mass Effect 2. Like, the new stuff that Mass Effect 3 added, I don't think was particularly spectacular. What was the one that was the big track they used in like the dream sequences at the end? Was it an end once and for all or something? An end for once and forever? I can't remember what it was called. I didn't think that was spectacular. It was okay, but it wasn't great. So I'm going to give it to Mass Effect 2. Do you have any plans to do Mass Effect 3 in the near future? No, but as I've said before, I might well just do Citadel on its own, because I don't think, Mass Effect 3's got some great moments. Alright, Rannoch is spectacularly good. The whole of Rannoch from start to finish is great. The Turian bit is not particularly interesting. I think the ending of the bit on Tuchanka is good. I think some of those missions are not so great. But Rannoch is spectacular. Absolutely perfect. If more of the game were like Rannoch, I think it would have been an absolute smash hit. Everyone would love Mass Effect 3. And the ending is, while not as bad as some people say, and there's certainly some really good emotional moments just before the ending itself can't help but be unsatisfying. But the Citadel DLC is spectacular and a perfect send-off, so I might just do the Citadel epilogue just basically on its own. John, you were sometimes worried about Benor's corpse despawning during a quick trip to Saltzheim. This got me thinking, were you also worried about whether it would have despawned when you got him killed at the Major's College? Do you have a backup plan in the event his corpse would have been gone? Do you have any idea how often Benor did cocking despawn? Or just go missing, like, all the time? I was just constantly babysitting Benor. Like, there's some places you just couldn't go to because Benor would just despawn. Like, I was unable to fast travel to Whiterun. I had to fast travel to the stables just below Whiterun. So if you ever fast travel to Whiterun, Benor would just disappear and he'd just be gone forever. So every time I was actually travelling back to Whiterun, I had to fast travel back to the stables and run up the hill, which was very slow and annoying. And loads of locations worked like that, so I had to be constantly saving in case Benor just went missing. If you've been paying very close attention, you may notice that I completed the quest Lights Out, but it's still showing up as an active quest in my quest log. This is because the quest Lights Out ate Benor. Like, every time I left the cave where you finish up Lights Out, Benor was just gone. He just disappeared in that load zone. So I had to revert to an earlier state and not complete Lights Out. So that was fun as well. Benor constantly was despawning, disappearing, refusing to travel with me, all sorts of other chaos. It was so difficult to keep him bloody alive. So bloody difficult. John, are you an only child? No, as I think I've mentioned a few times before, I do actually have a couple of sisters. I'm the youngest of 3 and I have 2 elder sisters. And a favourite childhood memory, I did actually get to go to Disneyland when I was a kid. My family, we all went to America together, and I did get to go to Disneyland. And while I can't remember all of it, because I was very young at the time, like, I do have some distinct memories of it being very, very cool for a young kid, yes. Here's a good one. Someone just, brought up a couple of other Total War commentators and YouTubers. I have been meaning to do something with some other guys on YouTube who kind of do stuff related to Stellaris, Civilization, Total War. I have been thinking about that. Like, recently I put out on Twitter, hey, is there anyone you'd be interested in seeing me collab with? And one of the things I have actually been, thinking about is doing something with some of the guys who actually do some of the big strategy games that I enjoy. So keep your eye out on that. I feel like my next big collab video might be something to do with Stellaris, Civilization, or Total War. We'll have to see. Because you don't have enough games on your list, I certainly do not. I started playing a game today called The Warlock of Firetop Mountain. Nice little tabletop-inspired game with turn-based fighting. Okay, could be an interesting one. Maybe add that one to the long list. Would you ever consider doing a prison architect or academia school simulator livestream? I think they'd be excellent candidates. Like, right now kind of we're in a bit of an interesting place in the live streams because I kind of am doing the Rome Total War and the Civilization. They're kind of alternating, so we're only occasionally doing stuff that isn't either of those things. Once one of those series kind of wraps up, I'll have more time for one-offs. And at that point, say, Prison Architect could be a very fun one, yes. What's your favourite faction to play as an Empire Total War? I think the British are the most fun myself. I've always enjoyed the Netherlands, actually. I do kind of go to the Netherlands a little bit, just because I like kind of triggering war across Europe, because the Netherlands are very well placed to immediately basically attack the small Spanish holding that's close by to them, and immediately trigger a pan-Europe war, which I like doing nice and early on. It's probably a very bad idea, but I do just basically enjoy triggering the World War a little bit early. What are the games that you've not made videos on or talked about much other than Skies of Arcadia that you consider a must-play? Interesting. There's a very small little-known series on the GameCube called Lost Kingdoms. There was Lost Kingdoms and Lost Kingdoms 2, which I consider exceptionally good. I don't think they're necessarily must-plays, but like if you ever have the opportunity to, like if you've got an old GameCube and you ever see them like just chilling out in a bargain bin, get them. They're damn good. There's a lot of Nintendo stuff I do consider absolutely excellent. Like I think Wind Waker is probably one of my favourite games, like, full stop. Wind Waker, I think, has aged spectacularly well. It's a great game. It doesn't outstay its welcome. It's short and to the point. It's got some really, really nice, good dungeon design going on. It's pretty. I think the story is, like, the core story is not overtold. It gets the point. It's got some good heart and some good characters to it. It's just a great little game. Wind Waker. There's a load of Nintendo games I love, like Advance Wars 2 is spectacular. Eternal Darkness, which was the second party Nintendo game, was spectacular. Metroid Prime, 1 more than 2, to be honest. 2 and 3, I think, are not so good. But Metroid Prime 1, spectacular. Loads of good Nintendo games. I just don't really talk about them because, Nintendo are dicks to YouTubers, so I'm not doing them on the channel. Someone raises an interesting point about Dragon Age Origins that is kind of one that's just floating around on the edge of my vision consistently because, it's generally widely regarded as, like, one of the games that came out of BioWare back when BioWare were making spectacular's good games. And, it's right up there with Mass Effect 1 insofar as, the quality of the script and the voice acting and all the rest of it. It's widely regarded, and rightly so, as a bit of a classic. That whether, the right thing to do with it is to play it through for the first time or play it through a second time. Because, the thing is, if I play it through for the first time on the channel, I will probably make some small mistakes as I go through. If I play through it the second time, I play it quietly off camera myself and then go back to it with, okay, now I know a bit of what I'm doing. The problem there is, if I've played it through once, then I just jump into it a second time. I don't think I'd know enough about it to actually talk about it with authority. I'd probably still make missteps, and I'd still annoy people who've been playing it for years by my mistakes. So that strikes me as pointless. It wasn't that I'd played Mass Effect 1 once, and then I did my no guns run. That was the first time we saw Mass Effect on the channel. I'd played Mass Effect over and over and over again. Like, I would flipping love, like, back in, oh, blimey, this was like a decade ago. That's depressing. Nearly a decade ago. I would flipping love at a weekend on my job, like if I had nothing to do and I wasn't going out anywhere, I would love like loading up Mass Effect and basically just playing through Mass Effect 1's campaign like over a day. Because once you know it pretty well, you can actually get through it pretty quickly. So just basically playing through the main campaign of Mass Effect 1 in a day. That's what I would really flipping love doing, and I know that game so damn well. I know a lot about Mass Effect 1, more than I know about Mass Effect 2 and 3. Definitely 3. 3, I've only played all the way through 3 once. And 2, like, quite a few times. 1, repeatedly over and over again, and Andromeda I still haven't finished. So I could probably, use that to kind of track the quality of the Mass Effect franchise in my head, because I do still consider Mass Effect 1 to be the best of all the Mass Effect games. 2 may have the better score. 1, I think, is the strongest game overall. Sorry, we were talking about Dragon Age Origins. I got distracted there. Yeah, I think, actually, because I'd still be making mistakes on my second playthrough of Dragon Age Origins, it will be my first playthrough. But I'll try and record it in small chunks, so I can, like, reflect on what the audience is saying. But then that also is a double-edged sword, because the thing is, like, when I play something that is very popular and people, like, know very well, what happens a lot is, like, people just kind of start saying, John, you need to do this. The right way to play this game is this. And they're probably correct insofar as, like, if you were min-maxing the game, like, that would be the optimal way to play it. But, like, it kind of takes some of the joy out of it for me as well. Like, some people kind of sometimes say, oh, I said this in the comments, why didn't John do this thing? It's because, well, sometimes I don't want to just basically say, okay, so based on the comments in the last video, I have determined mathematically the optimal strategy is to go to this location and then immediately go over to this person and speak to him. Now, obviously, I have no reason to do that, and my character and me myself have no idea why, but the comment said so, so that is what we are doing, because now I am a games playing robot, and I'm going to dance like I'm dancing like a robot right now. Dance like... I'm going to stop doing that now. Yeah, it kind of takes some of the joy out of it for me. And that's actually been the one downside of, like, XCOM, which is, I think it's been a really fun journey to kind of go through that, like, completely fresh to it. But, like, I appreciate that people who know XCOM better than me want to say, oh, no, that's a bad decision, and here's why. But, like, some people have also been, no, John, here's the thing you actually do, and it kind of takes some of the joy out of it. And it's why sometimes I don't pay quite as much attention to the comments, because, like, some people do it really well. Some people do it really, really well, and what they do is they say, okay, John, here's why the thing you've already done is a bad move, and next time a similar scenario shows up, here's some advice on how you might want to consider handling it instead, i.e. they don't spoil it. Some people just straight up get frustrated and just spoil things, and they're just going to say, John, you're doing this wrong, you need to do this quest next, and then, like, this resolution to it. And, okay, fine, so basically, like, if I see that, because I do try and read every single comment, if I see that, you've kind of spoilt that area for me now, because now, even if I don't do that, and I try and do what I would have done anyway, I know what someone who knows the game is recommending I would do, so now do I do that but not acknowledge I'm doing it because of the comments, or do I try and actually avoid doing that because I wouldn't have done it, and how do I know what I would have done if I'd never seen that comment? Yeah, some people, like, give comments that effectively spoilers, and some people comment very sensibly, and I try and only acknowledge the sensible ones, where people are kind of very sensitively saying, hey, John, here's a bit of advice for going forwards, rather than specifically, you need to do this! So it will be a problem whenever we do Dragon Age Origins in the future. That will absolutely be a problem, potentially. But, like, I think I'm gonna love it enough that I think people will hopefully be willing to, like, chill out a little bit with the spoilers, just because they're hopefully enjoying me discovering it. And, like, it sounds from what I've seen that it's so much like games I love, I'm going to love it enough that people are going to just be kind of along for the ride, I'm hoping. Also, a recommendation for a potential collab with Magicka 1 or 2 or Ghost Recon Wildlands. Interesting. Might think about those in the future, possibly. John, I sometimes go back and rewatch the old Fallout playthroughs. I'm wondering how many views you get from the older backlog of videos on a monthly basis. Quite a lot. Quite a flipping lot, actually. In fact, like, I've literally just kind of pulled up. Actually, let's just do this properly. Right, last 30 days. I've literally got my analytics from YouTube in front of me. So the last 30 days, mostly, it is indeed stuff that is actually kind of pretty much like new stuff. That's all new stuff, fine. So like, Sea of Thieves is at the top, the new Realpolitik video is there, the kind of several parts of Frost are on the mid-table. Surviving Mars, the first part, is actually up there as well, which is really cool. However, if I go back to, say, the last 90 days, I imagine the picture starts changing a little bit. And then we've got, actually, Rumu is top. Rumu's actually top in the last 90 days with 145,000 views. So that's just flipping marvellous. So I'm guessing that's just ranking high on the turn Rumu. Hilariously, Government Simulator is actually in at number 4 with 79,000 views. So I'm guessing we're just the top ranked video on YouTube for Government Simulator, which is hilarious because that entire live stream was basically a troll where I was deliberately slowly taking away guns from America and then imposing monarchy because it was like a long running joke. It was like a slow burn joke where I could basically say, okay, and now the British people have taken your guns. Now I'm going to set myself up as king, yay! The comment section on that is a hilarious nightmare. I just ignore it. It's marvellous. Kingdom Come Deliverance is pretty high with 73,000 views. Stellaris Apocalypse, the first part, is up there. But the interesting one is, in terms of old videos, is here we go. So there's 2 older Fallout series where their first part has actually shown up. So Fallout 4 Survival Mode, Welcome to Hell, that was the first part, has actually, even though that came out in March 2016, that's had 72,000 views just in the last 90 days. Even higher, however, is Fallout New Vegas Kill Everything Part 1, which has picked up 87,000 views in the last 90 days. And that consistently is towards the top of the videos, which I kind of makes me cringe, because I can't go back and watch it now. The production values on it are too low. The editing's poor, the voiceover's not great. It just makes me cringe. I can't watch it. But it does seem to do well. It does seem to do well, damn it. So there you are. That's just a thing. That's just a thing that people still keep watching. And people seem to watch it and people still seem to enjoy it. It's fine. Hang on, let's just quickly double check this. Yeah, I mean, it's still got a very, very favourable like to dislike ratio. It's got 17,700 thumbs up to 500 thumbs down. So it's not like people are coming across it today and thinking, oh no, this is total garbage. I definitely won't watch this anymore. But yeah, I think it's also my most viewed video of all time with 1.5 million views. 1,773,000 to be precise. Though some other series are kind of doing pretty well as well. So the first part of New Vegas You Only Live Once has got nearly 800,000 views. But it does kind of make me a little bit sad looking back that, yeah, it's actually New Vegas Kill Everything Part 1 that's actually got the most views. Because I feel like 1, it's scruffy. And 2, I think that's actually a superior flipping series already, which is Fallout 3 Kill Everything. I think that is just a much, much better series overall. It's so kind of much better put together. I think the comedy in it works so much better, but that just gets a lot less views, unfortunately, because New Vegas Kill Everything ranks pretty nicely if you just search for Fallout New Vegas, whereas Fallout 3 Kill Everything does not if you search for Fallout 3. Actually, you know what? I say that. I think it's actually started ranking better at some point, because that's actually got 1.3 million views, 1,371,000 to be precise. And that's got 15,000 thumbs up to 400 thumbs down. And I think it's a much, much better series. So, yeah, I'm kind of glad that's actually gained the views as well. I thought that was a bit lower. I remember there being more of an actual gulf between them. So I'm kind of hoping that maybe Fallout 3 Kill Everything is actually, that's ranking a bit higher these days. So that's kind of fun. We've presumably got someone new into the Patroncast this week saying, are you and Claire dating, or are you just good friends or roommates? No, we are dating. We've been dating for nearly a decade. It's going to be 10 years we've been dating next year. So yeah, we've been together for a very, very long time. And what are you hoping to see return or not return in the next Fallout game? For Fallout 5, I'd love to see them handed over to Obsidian again. Let Obsidian make a new game, damn it. But if we do actually just get Fallout 5 next, I'm hoping the crafting system returns. I'm really hoping the crafting system returns, because I think the way the gunplay works and crafting works and junk works in Fallout 4 is spectacularly good. Like, that works so damn well. Like, it's a really, really good system, and I think it's so much better than what we had in Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas. Like, just because even in New Vegas, there's lots of rooms you'll go into where there's nothing of interest in them because the junk has no value. But when junk actually starts having situational value under certain circumstances, that can be a really, really good thing, because it means every area has value. Even if you don't find anything particularly good in an area, in Fallout 4, you can find, like, normally at least like a couple of bits of junk that you think, okay, that's actually got a component that I need if I want to get my hunting rifle upgraded to the next level. So I really hope they keep the crafting and the junk system and the gunplay exactly as is, because I think that's just wonderful right now. As for what needs to not return, I could do with them, rethinking the quest structure. Because, like, clearly at some point, some people who were working on quests in Fallout 4, like, were working on the idea that quests should be open and interesting and have alternative solutions and skill checks and diddly-diddly-dee. Like, if you look at the quest on the USS Constitution, whoever made that quest, they clearly had a little bit of New Vegas on the mind. And then if you look at how all the quests fit together in Far Harbor, say, like the way there's kind of factions and you build up relationships with characters, and then the way the factions interact and how there's multiple different, very radically different endings that you can choose where you go with one faction than the other, and then like the factions provide you with unique, interesting rewards in terms of unique gear and unique perks that are very powerful but they're mutually exclusive. There's a lot of really interesting stuff you can do, and morally grey stuff that makes it interesting from a narrative as well as a gameplay perspective. And some parts of Nuka World are very, very well put together. So, for example, the sci-fi themed land in Nuka World, where you've got to kind of gather a certain number of the circuit boards, the star cores, in order to actually fix up the land. You get to choose where you're going to go, whether you want to go into like the roller coaster, or whether you want to go into the cinema, or whether you want to go into the BattleBots arena, and all of that. Like, that's really cool. That was really, really cool indeed. But then, Nuka World also has some of the more boring stuff in Fallout 4. Like, the Safari Zone is just straight up boring. Just because it's a bunch of big crocodile kind of Deathclaw rip-off things, and you've just got to kind of whack your way past a giant pile of them, and it's not particularly interesting. But, like, if they took the best bits of the quests from Fallout 4, and they mixed it with Fallout 4's level design, because Fallout 4's level design is also really nice. Like, if you look at areas like the Corvega assembly plant, or the big open ruined town areas like Lexington, like, there's some really, really beautifully put together wide open areas and big dungeony areas with multiple entry and exit points in Fallout 4. If they took that sort of ethos for how to build a level, and they applied the quest structure from the best, most open quests in Fallout 4, and had less of the kind of slightly boring quests that Fallout 4 sadly does have too many of, then I think you could have a really, really good game. I think they're really close to coming up with a spectacular game that could be as good as New Vegas if they just slightly tweak the quest ethos a little bit. I think they're so close. Fallout 4 it's a near miss from being an absolute diamond, and I think it's a fantastic game, and I think it's a very near miss from being exceptional. John, have you ever run into a game called Unreal World? No, I have not, and that's possibly because it came out in 1992, when I was only a little child. But apparently it's still in active development, with regular updates, which is amazing. Right, we might give that a look at some point. Are you or Claire well-travelled people? Where would you most like to go on holiday? I personally am not. I don't really enjoy travel that much. I'm not really much of a travel bug type person. So I've travelled a lot around Italy and Greece, because back when I was a bit more, active in terms of studying classics, I would go and see the ancient sites and do some little digs and whatever around there. So, I kind of used to travel a little bit around Europe, around the ancient sites there, but I'm not desperately well-travelled, to be honest. Like, when I was growing up, we'd just go on, like, little holidays to touristy spots, to be honest. Like, I've been to, like, the Canary Islands a few times, because my parents wanted to chill out with some sun, and fair enough. And, like I was saying earlier, actually, I've been to Disneyland, I've been to America a few times. I was probably like the most well-traveled part of my life was before I was a YouTuber, like a few years before, because I used to have a job that would take me to Los Angeles on not a regular basis. I'd go over to Los Angeles like 2 or 3 times a year or something and spend a few weeks' time over there working in that area. And I've also worked briefly in Germany as well. But these days, not so much. I'm not so much for travelling. I think Claire's a bit more well-travelled than me, however. So I'll actually just pass over to Claire to where she'd most like to go on holiday, because like my perfect holiday is probably no holiday at all. I'd rather just stay here, to be honest.
I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily well-traveled. Like, I've been to a few places around Europe, but not even that many. And then I've been to America a couple of times. I've been to New York, and I've been to LA one time with John, and I didn't particularly love it. I'm going back to the US this summer to go to Worldcon, and that's the bulk of the travel that I do now, is to go to conventions. So it's more of like a social aspect than necessarily travel aspect, but I do try to kind of eat some good local food when I go places for conventions. Next year I'm going to go to Dublin, Ireland for Worldcon, so that's kind of closer by to us, but I've never been, so I'm excited. And it looks like Worldcon might be in New Zealand the year after that, so I'm already kind of tentatively saving up for that, because I would really, really like to go to Hobbiton.
How do I actually plan out the channel and its content and everything? I use Google Calendar. I use a Google Calendar with a color-coded system to it. So basically, like, I keep it on, is it 4 weeks? Yeah, I keep it on the 4-week setting. And every time, like, you know, we go from Sunday into Monday, and thus it jumps up a week, then that means basically the content that's like 2 weeks out will now be on... Okay, the bottom line is where I keep a long list of everything I'm interested in. Alright, the top line is the week we're currently in, then obviously the second line is next week, and the third line is the week after. So the week that's 2 weeks out, then at that point I lay down an initial kind of series of videos. I just pull in stuff that's in the backlog that's just waiting to go live. I look at the launch stuff that's coming out that week, and I say, okay, let's tentatively assume I might cover some of that stuff either on the day or just before or just after. I put in the regular series that are obviously going to be in their normal place, so I know roughly what's happening in 2 weeks' time, and they're all in red. Once I've recorded it but not edited it, it goes to orange. Once it's been actually edited and it's ready to be rendered, it stays orange but picks up a star, then it goes yellow once it's been rendered, and green once it's been uploaded, ready to be released. So I organise everything with a Google Calendar. If you could have one Pokemon as a pet or companion, which would you choose? Growlithe. Because I'm pretty sure back in the original Red and Blue Pokedex, it did specifically say the Growliths were really warm to hug, because they're fire types, so they're really warm to hug. So 100% Growlithe. Then there's a question about, yes, the use of the egg box in the videos, which is partly about how I manipulate things as an egg box, but I'll kind of answer that tangentially, because of course I can't really answer what's effectively a joke question. The egg box thing was just something I made up on the spot when I did the first cooking video. And then it just kept coming back year after year, and now it's a thing. And now eggs and egg boxes is just a regular ongoing joke, and occasionally I name things in games like the egg box or whatever. If I kind of have a ship, I might name it the briny egg box or what have you. But yeah, there you go. It's just a thing I made up on the spot, and it's become a thing. John, could we get a squad of you, Dan, and the 2 Matts in PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds? You know, I'm not big on PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. As I said in Fortnite, I actually prefer Fortnite. And I'd like to think I've been vindicated there, because Fortnite's now like the biggest game in the world. So I was one step ahead of the game saying I preferred it to PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. So yeah, I actually prefer Fortnite. I would love to do a collab with some other people with Fortnite. I don't know who or when, but I would love to do a collab in Fortnite, because I genuinely actually enjoy the game, even if I'm not very good at it. What was it that originally got you wanting to study ancient languages and history? For me, it was Rome Total War. Rome Total War came out too late for that. Rome Total War, I think, came out while I was actually at university already studying classics, so that was too late for me. But for me, I can't remember exactly like what made me think it specifically. Like, I think it was actually really pragmatic. I think it was just like when I was at school, I was really good at Latin and Greek, and I found them pretty easy. Like, I could get A's in Latin without really trying particularly hard. The language just kind of, it just fitted in my head. I could just kind of do it pretty easily. It worked for me. And then I figured out, okay, well, I'm pretty damn good at this. So potentially if I could get into a really good university because there's less competition to study classics at university because not many schools offer it, then that might be a way of getting into a really good university. Then I could get a really good degree, and yay, that'd be a good idea. So I think I was actually pretty cold and pragmatic about it. The fact that I really enjoyed it helped too. I was good at it and I enjoyed it. And I thought it would be a bit easier to get into a really good university studying it, and it all seems to have worked out actually. John, have you considered doing a series on Kerbal Space Program? I don't think so. I don't think it would work for me because I think it would just be frustrating for people to watch me genuinely try and play it seriously. I'm going to go back and do another one-off on it at some point because it just picked up its first bit of actual DLC if I recall correctly. It's just picked up a whole bunch of missions, which I might well do as a new live stream. And I think it's occasionally just a one-off. It's funny. I don't think it would work as a series for me. John, shag, marry, kill Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un. Oh, marvellous. Absolutely flippin' marvellous. Okay, that's an interesting one. Okay, let's immediately assign kill to Kim Jong-un because, he's kind of led to the starvation, imprisonment and murder of huge numbers of his own people. So, probably more so than the other two. So, let's actually get rid of him because that's just a good for the world if I have to kill one of those three. So, let's just assign that one there, which leaves shag and marry for Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Right. I guess I'll go for marry with Donald Trump, because he's been married repeatedly, so I can just basically go through the normal steps of marrying, getting divorced when it turns out he's cheated on me, and then basically getting a massive divorce settlement. And I would simply, therefore, by default, shag Vladimir Putin, because he's the only one left. I wouldn't want to marry him, because I'd be very concerned what would happen next if he brought me a cup of tea in the morning. So, yeah, probably best to just get in and out of there pretty fast, all things considered. If you could have any ability, skill, or power of any fictional character, what would it be and why? I'm going to go for stop time. Sometimes I say super speed, because I like being able to get places quickly, and it frustrates me when it takes more to get places. I might also go for stop time, because then I can just have more time to think. Though actually, maybe I'll stick with super speed, because super speed meant I could save a lot of time by going to places and not having to worry about travel time. So, ooh, that's difficult. Either stop time or super speed. But basically both of them are for the same reasons. Which is I want to kind of save time and have more time to do the actual stuff I want to do. Because stop time, it depends what rules we're playing by. Because if I've stopped time, does that mean I couldn't really do anything productive anyway? Because the computer would be frozen. So I wouldn't be able to record videos or anything. Because I'd be going so fast it would just kind of be it wouldn't work. So, okay, maybe, no, hang on, yeah, I'll just go for super speed. That one's easier, because I can just nip to the shops to get milk super fast, and that's much easier. Yeah, that's a good one. Why do you tend to censor yourself in terms of swearing on the main channel, while swearing more freely in collabs? It's one of those things, because I don't have any reason not to be honest. No one is going to like the channel less because I'm not swearing. Nobody needs swearing on a day-to-day basis. But for a small number of people, either people who just don't enjoy swearing or people who, might watch with younger people or watch with children or whatever, for them, it makes the channel less desirable and less good. So, I may as well just kind of try and keep swearing at a minimum, just because swearing doesn't really add anything aside from, the occasional time when, it will be a funny punchline after a comedic pause or whatever. But for the most part, it's not going to add anything, but for some people, it would take something away. So, it's just basically trying to come up with a scenario that works for the most people, really. If you could convert any single song into a hurdy-gurdy cover, what would it be? Well, obviously, Skater Boy. I'm just curious what that would sound like. Do you plan to cover The Last of Us 2? Maybe as a midweek mini-series, or, just a part when it comes out. I don't really intend to do, the whole thing. Not right now, anyway. I don't really know much about it. Maybe, if the reviews are absolutely glowing when it comes out, maybe I'd consider it. How about Detroit Become Human? I will likely do a one-off or a short series there. I've never been massive on David Cage, to be honest. Some of his stuff, works okay. I don't think it works overall. So, maybe as, a one-off or a short series, but not the full thing. I've also noticed a lot of your videos are now longer than 1 hour. Yeah, I've noticed that too. There's not really any reason for that, really. It's often because I think it's more the series than anything else. Like, the one-offs tend to be a bit on the shorter side, but the series, because, like, I want to feel like, you know, they've actually got a good amount of new stuff going on, I'll often let them go on a little bit longer, because I don't want to feel like, you know, I've done an entire part of a series where nothing much happens. So I'll kind of keep going until, like, you know, 2 or 3 actually interesting big changes happens. So sometimes that might mean, like, you know, Skyrim or Stellaris kind of slip over an hour, but the one-offs tend to be a little bit more on the manageable side, I think. What are your overall thoughts on Sea of Thieves? Honestly, I think kind of, yeah, what I said at the end of the final part we did pretty much holds true, which is, I think it's a really good foundation that you could build a really cool game on, but it needs way more content. Like, it's too shallow at the minute. Like, it's a really fun thing for a bunch of friends to play together, but yeah, it needs a lot more content. I was wondering if you've ever played Shadows over Camelot, the board game. I'm pretty sure we own it, but I'm not sure I've actually ever played it. I think I bought it at some point. We never actually got around to playing it, so we might need to fix that at some point. John, would you consider playing Stormworks on a live stream? Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'd consider bringing Stormworks back as a live stream. I've thought about that before, absolutely. With the release of Stellaris 2.0 and Apocalypse, who do you now think has the worst job in the Stellaris universe? I think I'll stick with the original answer I gave some time ago, which is, yeah, those first few colonies who actually have to settle down on the new world when they just basically don't have any infrastructure yet, and they're basically just down there to allow me to build robots on a planet. Yeah, I think they've still got a pretty bad job. How did you make the jump from creative writing into YouTube? I wouldn't really call it a jump, to be honest. All that really happened was, yeah, I used to, in my free time, do a bit of creative writing as a creative outlet. Now I do this instead. And in some ways, they're kind of similar, just because I like doing storytelling and role-playing in games. So, like, you know, I'm still crafting little stories. It's just now they're within an established video game. Basically, I'm just writing video game fan fiction in video form, aren't I? Marvellous. Which franchise would you most like to see the treatment of movie to video game or video game to movie? Can I give a different answer? I actually would rather actually see the book series of Jasper Ford's Thursday Next books be converted into like an Amazon series or a Netflix series or something. Now that I'd like to see. Also, we've been using a Keurig machine to warm up our water for tea instead of a proper kettle. Does that make us monsters? I don't know what that is, but it's not a kettle, so yes. Yes, absolutely. Tell us a funny story from your real life. Not sure whether you consider this funny, but do you remember when Iceland exploded a few years ago, when that bloody unpronounceable volcano basically started erupting and it shut down the airspace over pretty much all of Europe? I was in America at the time, and it happened, shortly before I was actually planning to be heading home. And basically, like, you know, I was just kind of, you know, double checking all my travel plans for returning from Los Angeles to the UK. And I saw the travel alert that North Europe was closed. I think that was the exact phrasing I saw. I just saw a kind of a summation through like a tweet or something. Northern Europe is currently closed. Thinking, Northern Europe is... How do you close... What's happened in Northern Europe? It was that one phrasing. Northern Europe is closed. And yeah, air traffic was just not coming in or out for a few weeks. And I was just stuck in America. This was just after I'd started a new job. And I'd gone over to America to basically go and see the head office and meet my counterparts in the American office, but I wasn't actually trained properly yet. So I was just like in America sitting at my desk like, yep, don't really know how to do my job. So, and right now I'm on like, I think it was, 7 or 8 hours off the hours in the UK office. So the overlap between my working hours and the overlap of the people who could have actually taught me how to do my job in the UK was only like a couple of hours a day. So I was just sitting there going, yep. Trapped in America until they reopened Northern Europe, and I just kind of sat at a desk, and you know what? They paid me, and they were oddly apologetic, given they didn't actually, you know, they weren't the ones that blew up Iceland, as far as I'm aware. They even actually basically offered to buy me a free internal American flight, so I went up to Seattle and visited some old friends of mine that lived in that area, so that was just lovely. Have you heard of Divinity 2? Yes, that's the original Sin thing, isn't it? I have indeed heard of that, and I think I actually own it, and at some point I think Claire and I do it together, because I think it's actually got a co-op mode too. Yeah, the person here mentioned that it's in the style of the Baldur's Gate series, which I haven't played much of, but I have played a bit of Baldur's Gate. Is it Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance? Was that the one that was the slightly more modernish 3D one? I think it was Dark Alliance. I played that with an old flatmate of mine, so I've definitely played a little bit of that, yes. Creative Assembly seem to have a cool policy revolving around YouTubers, but are you now obligated to cover Total War games after being invited to so many events of theirs? I wouldn't say I'm obligated, but the thing is, yeah, you're right insofar as if I were to stop covering Total War games, they'd probably stop inviting me to events. But if I wasn't covering Total War games, I wouldn't want to go to the events. So, as long as I keep going to the events and they keep giving me the early access to the Total War games, that kind of works for me. So it's a bit of a virtuous cycle. Honestly, I don't see it as a bad thing. John at XCOM, well done on improving quickly. You might want to move the main plot along, since you might be able to lower general panic overall if you do that. Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, the next part's already recorded. So, yeah, sorry, Canada might be in a spot of trouble there, unfortunately. So, yeah, I did not get those messages in time. So, that is a bit of a shame. John, have you ever played or considered playing an old game called Titanic Adventure Out of Time? I have not, but I will give it a look-see at some point. John, thoughts on Talisman? I do not actually have Talisman. I've never played it. I think a friend of ours has it, but we've never played it as his place either. I think isn't that the one where it takes bloody ages? I think it takes absolutely bloody ages, if that's the one I'm thinking of, which might not necessarily make it the best video, we'll have to say. John, I'd love to see a final epic battle of John versus the Ebony Warrior in Skyrim. Please keep playing until you're level 80. Yeah, that might be a problem. I've kind of been around the late 50s into early 60s for some time at this point, just because the skills that are easiest to level up, like one-handed and light armor, are either 100, or in the case of Conjuration, yeah, that's 100s too, or it's stuff I'm not using so much. Like, my blocking and light armor is still going up slowly, but I feel like I'm not going to get anywhere near to level 80 by the end of the playthrough. I suspect I'll be about level 65 by the end. But I'll see if maybe I can use console commands to spawn him. I love it when you go off on a tangent. I learn these odd and interesting things. What's the oddest tangent you've ever found yourself on? Well, earlier this very part I started dancing like a robot, so probably that. What are your 3 favourite things about America and the UK? Ooh, interesting. Ooh, 3. 3 might be a bit hard. Maybe I'll just go for 1. Can't think of 3. 1 for the UK. Okay, Marks and Spencer's. I'm going to say Marks and Spencer's because they're wonderful and I love them. It's kind of hard to say, to be honest. I like living in the UK, but it's just a blend of just it's comfortingly familiar to me. I understand how it all fits together. There's not one thing. Like I say, yes, it's because of those special magic clouds we have. It's just because I'm a person that prides contentment as a good emotional state I aim for, and UK just being a place where I can be content because I know it all fits together. So if I think about America, I'm gonna be honest, I've never really had a desperately good time when I've been in America. It's just been, yep, going to America now on work. Guess I'll work in America, then come home. You guys have got some good restaurants, the diners are good. Whenever I've been to, the diners and I've asked for, a stack of pancakes or some waffles, you get a damn big stack of pancakes or waffles. That's good. I'm going to say, yeah, your diners, because your portions are quite generous. Ooh, recommendation for Slay the Spire. That's come up before. I really should give that a look, because that does sound pretty damn good, yes. I was listening to a YouTuber the other day who said he didn't like it when people promote their channel in the comments of the videos because it's basically making a cheap gain off someone else's hard work. What's your opinion on the issue? I don't like it, but not because it's someone making a cheap gain off someone else's work. I don't like it because it's basically spam. Someone promoting their channel, they may as well be promoting their stupid multi-level marketing scheme or trying to sell you timeshare in the Gran Canaria. It's just basically advertising, and it's basically just spam. So whenever I happen to see it, I pretty much just delete it. I can understand why people might do it. It's a competitive space, and a lot of the people that are growing YouTube channels are very young. And they don't really know about, how to do marketing, and they don't really know how to be, professionally polite to other YouTubers and better ways that they could potentially approach other YouTubers and whatever. I don't really, hate it or anything, but if I see it, I'll just get rid. Any chance we could see John and Claire co-op with Human Fall Flat? Interesting idea. I didn't know it actually had local co-op, or if it does, actually. I'll need to look into that. If it has local co-op, that could be a good one. Do you know of any satisfactory responses to Zeno of Elia's paradoxes of motion, in particular the dichotomy? Not my over-expertise. I never really dug deep into the Greek philosophers at all, particularly the ones who are focused more on, logical and mathematical problems. I've read a little bit of, Aristotle and whatever, but to be honest, not my over-expertise. I was always much more focused on the literary side of the classical world. Have you ever seen a series called Chuck? Ooh, I've seen adverts for it, but I've never actually watched it. But, from the adverts I saw, it looked like it was kind of silly fun, so potentially I might go and catch that at some point. Any update on the MATN coaster set? No, bit slow at the minute. We've been a bit busy recently, just with day-to-day video business, so no real progress there, but we will chase that up and see what we can do. The actor who plays Geldis in The Retching Netch has one of the worst English accents I've ever heard in a game. I'm American, it makes me cringe. Is it torture for you? To be honest, I hadn't quite realised that was supposed to be an English accent. I mean, all the accents are kind of bad. The ridiculous broad Yorkshire accents you get from some of the guards wandering around, is already quite ridiculous. I just kind of write it off as being utterly silly and don't even think about it too much. I've been in a Douglas Adams deep dive this month. I know you mentioned Hitchhikers in your very first video. I was wondering about your and Claire's history with the franchise. It's been a while, actually. I wouldn't call myself a massive Douglas Adams fan. I'm not saying it's bad. I've read it, I've enjoyed it. I personally don't really consider myself, a massive fan of it, that's all. For me, it's not, a big thing around which I build an identity. I'm trying to remember what I have and haven't seen of it now. If I recall correctly, I've heard the original radio series, that was a long time ago. I read the first 2 books, Hitchhikers and then Restaurant at the End of the... Was it End of the Universe or End of the Galaxy? I can't even remember now. And obviously I saw the most recent film when it came out. I was a bit disappointed in that one. And yeah, I enjoy it, but I wouldn't consider myself a massive fan of it. When would you decide to start talking the second person in your videos? Be careful of ghouls, you'll want to give them a wide berth. Oh, it's way more inconsistent than that. Sometimes I use singular first person, sometimes plural first person. I just randomly kind of jump between saying I and we, and sometimes I'll just say you'll, which is, I suppose, vaguely didactic. I'm kind of vaguely phrasing it as if I'm putting together a guide. I'm saying, okay, when you're playing through this area, this is something you'll want to take note of, I'm putting together a guide or something. I don't know. I just randomly switch between first, second, and singular and plural whenever I feel like it. Do you have plans to play Spec Ops The Line? They have actually just given it away for free with Humble, if I recall correctly. So maybe at some point I'm going to feature. The problem with Spec Ops The Line is obviously it all leads up to the creeping sense of discomfort that leads to a series of big twists that changes the tone of it. But if I were to put together one video about it, then you wouldn't really get to much of that. It would just basically look to most people like a normal shooter with a bit of a sand gimmick going on. I'd maybe get to some of the slightly uncomfortable bits, but I'd need to do a full series to get to the big twists, and either you already know the twists, and I do, in which case it's not necessarily that interesting, or you don't, in which case you'd probably drop out after the first part because you don't know it's... I'm just not sure it works as a YouTube series. If you had to create a video game where the premise, focus, or core is a single pun, what would that pun be? I'm going to go for Pirates, which is a pirate game where you're playing as rats, but everything's actually shrunk down to scale properly. So, the boat is tiny, and you're just, little rats scuttling around on top of it. But, you're basically just, in, a body of water, where even, little ripples are really going to throw your ship around because you're in this little crappy plastic toy boat. That'd be great. Hi, John, how's life? Oh, life is good, especially as we now seem to be in spring proper. It's definitely warming up in the UK right now. Have you ever listened to Myths and Legends, the podcast? No, I don't really listen to podcasts. Claire does. I'm afraid, when I'm just out and about, not working, I just like to have a bit of peace and quiet, because I spend too much time listening to my own voice, to be honest. So I do prefer just kind of chilling out and having some peace and quiet when I'm not actually recording. Have you ever considered playing the 2008 game Spore? Yes. That I would love to do. If I could really hyper-compress that down to, say, just one part for each, phase, which probably is really ambitious because the phases are way too long to really be one part each. I'd love to do it as, just a 4 or 5 part mini-series, just basically doing one episode per phase. I think that would be really fun. I'm not sure it would work, though. What are some difficulties or benefits of YouTubing you didn't expect when you started? Ooh, interesting. The difficulty is probably and I think Claire maybe suffers with this one a little bit more than me, separating work and not work time and space. Because, we live and we work in the same environment. So I have just about managed to set up, proper Chinese walls in my mind at this point, where I can, live and work in the same space, and it's fine for me. But I can see how that can be difficult. in some ways. Benefits of YouTubing is you can basically just set your own schedule a little bit. So, if you want to lie in, you can just have a lie in any day you want. But, obviously, you're working for yourself. So if you're not working, then you're not making any money and no one's making any content because I'm the only one that makes the content. So as a result, yeah, you've kind of, while you could take off any time that you wanted to, you could give yourself all the holiday in the world, you end up taking no holiday whatsoever. That's both a benefit and a difficulty. Have you ever tried Ultimate General Civil War? No, and I've not really actually heard of it either. I don't know anything about that one, but from your description, it does appear to look pretty good, with massive battles, so you promise. Made by the Darth mod guy who broke off from making mods for Total War. Interesting. Might well give it a look at some point. You gain the ability to transform into an animal at will. What animal do you choose? You only pick one. I'll go for a large bird of some description. I'd like to be able to fly. That'd be cool. It would get me places nice and fast. But I want a big enough bird that a bigger bird's not going to come along and, eat me. So maybe, a falcon or something. Do you accept challenges? Recreate the M80N logo in the Stellaris universe. Thanks to 2.0 and Apocalypse, that's technically possible. It's just a catastrophically bad idea because you'd basically have empty space next to the whole thing, so you'd just be constantly attacked by pirates. After you've recorded a video, edited it and rendered it and uploaded it, how do you make sure it's rendered properly? I upload it to YouTube first, and then just before a video goes out, I go into the back end, I start the video playing to make sure the resolutions are present, then I just skip to just before the end to make sure the audio doesn't go out of sync, and then I add on the end cards. So it's just a final check there just to be sure. I definitely don't watch it an additional full time after it's been rendered or uploaded. I literally just quickly skim through the beginning and the end to make sure the audio doesn't desync. Recently I listened to the audiobook Mythos, a retelling of Greek myths by Stephen Fry. Very entertaining, it's actually read by him, he does all the voice of the Greek gods. Have you heard of it? No, I've not. Again, audiobooks like podcasts are not really something I actually ever listen to. If I read books, I like to kind of quietly reading a book, but I will actually give that one a look at some point, yes. Probably the original book form rather than the audiobook. Do you guys watch in-depth reviews and critiques for games, such as the ones by Joseph Anderson? No, I try and avoid actually reading reviews of games when I might be about to play them myself, because I prefer to go in, without, bias. So I look up factual information about a game, and I try and be as kind of factually aware as I can be, but I try to avoid actual reviews and spoilers and whatever, because I like to try and go in with a clear head. You get to meet and spend up to a week with anyone in history in their time period. Who do you choose? Oh, I always choose Aristophanes for these questions. Aristophanes, the Greek comic playwright. He's marvellous and wonderful, and I love his work, and I'd love to chill out with him. Especially if I get to choose the week, because we choose the actual week he's, putting on the frogs or something, because that'd be marvellous. I'm 16, I recently went to an Oxbridge student conference. I'm now considering applying to Cambridge. Absolutely everything about my course and university appeals to me. I'm worried about finance. I currently live in the north of Scotland and my family has never had a high income. Do you think there's a way I can make this work, or is it pointless? You can. You absolutely can, because in terms of through the Student Finance Initiative, you can basically take out loans that will pretty much allow you to cover the cost of the actual tuition and any additional fees the university might levy, and then you can take out a student loan that will cover your living accommodations, because accommodation tends to be fairly well subsidised if you stay in halls, especially in Oxford and Cambridge, where you should be able to stay in halls all the time you're there if that's what you want to do. You will end up in debt. You will absolutely end up in debt, but it is debt that is relatively well set up, which is you only start paying it back once you're past a certain threshold. The interest, however, is a little bit aggressive on parts, but I think they've just changed it. I think it doesn't gain interest before you start repaying it, but when you start repaying it, which is when you pass a certain threshold of earnings, at that point interest does start accruing on it. But there are being challenges to that, and I'm hoping they'll change that, because there has been a bit of backlash against that. So by the time you get to university, that should hopefully be gone. I think, if you think you are good enough, and you didn't kind of say what your GCSE results were or what your projected A-level results are, if you are strong enough to be going to an Oxbridge student conference, so clearly the people who took it there are thinking you're a potentially good candidate for Oxbridge, if you can get into Oxbridge and you think you're good enough to actually get a good degree, and you think it's a perfect course for you, really liking the sound of, then abso-flipping-lutely, it's worth taking on student debt. If you were going to a really poor polytechnic somewhere, like that's the point where you start thinking, okay, if this, like, you know, a nowhere polytechnic with a bit of a fluffy course is charging me £9,000 a year in tuition, then that's maybe not worth it. If you are capable of getting into Oxbridge, yeah, absolutely, I'd say the student debt is structured in such a way as it's 100% worth it to take it because of the amount of potential benefit you'll get out of that going forward. Like, I know it's debt and that might be scary if you come from a low-income background, but try and think of it as an investment, because if you can get into Oxbridge, it 100% is an investment that should really pay for itself. How much do you need to go back and censor yourself when you're playing games? Interesting question. Very occasionally I'll kind of catch myself swearing more strongly than I want to. It's very rare. It's like, you know, once every 20 videos or something. But then I just basically just repeat the line I just said, but without the swearing, and we just fixed in editing. So very rarely, but sometimes. How much do you swear in your day-to-day life? A lot more than I do in the videos. I do swear pretty cash fat, probably too much. I kind of like to cut down. It's probably a bad habit to accidentally do that, especially as I do have a few nieces and nephews, so I might accidentally swear in front of them at one point. I don't think I ever have, but just in case I ever did, it's probably a good idea I kind of just try and ease down a little bit. What was the best or worst night out you've ever been on? I once worked for a company that had a very generous Christmas party budget, and we went to a really swish nightclub in the centre of London. There was just a lot of booze flowing. It was a bit of a blurry night, but it was a fun night. In fact, actually, I have a mug. I own a mug with a photo of all of us taken on that night on it, which is, I know sounds weird that you'd have like a mug with a photo of old co-workers on it out at a Christmas party, but it was a hell of a party, alright? That's what a good party it was. If you were to create a mod for Skyrim or Fallout 4, what would you dream up? I have always kind of vaguely dreamed about putting, like, you know, a John character in as a companion mod and them having, like, an associated quest. I just never get around to it because it's quite a lot of work. Unfortunately, I'm slightly behind in Skyrim at the moment. Would you be able to provide me with a brief summary of Necromancer John's exploits over the last 36 episodes so I can hop back into the series? Okay. I hope you're now able to have permanent undead thralls and once again have Benno at your side. Okay, so the summary of the last 36 episode is... kill everything, Benno's back, Benno's dead, Benno's back, Benno's dead, Benno's back, Benno's dead, Benno's back, Benno's dead for good. Let's move on with our lives. Right, and now we're in Dragonborn. It's a bit more complicated than that, but, you know, there we go. Kind of a follow-up question from a different person. Did I script any of the Benno business? No, I just kind of came up with some as I came along. Like, after I figured out Benno was going to be a love interest and was going to hang around, I did kind of come up with the idea that Benno and I would get married, be killed, come back. But, like, I embellished it a little bit, and, like, you know, Benno showing up inside the Hall of Heroes was like a touch I came up with a little bit more last minute. But I always had ideas, like, you know, I always have, like, the vague sketch of an arc, and then I flesh it out close to the time. But I never really script anything. It's just kind of stuff I came up with as I went along. You seem to be loving all the pirate stuff recently. Any chance for Assassin's Creed Black Flag? Ooh, I did enjoy Assassin's Creed Black Flag when I played it briefly at one point. Maybe I will nip back to that at some point or other. I'm not sure. Are there any games you've been pleasantly surprised by recently? Ooh, let's have a look, see. What was my most recent pleasant surprise? Because I can't really say Surviving Mars, so I kind of expected that to be good. So the fact it turned out to be good, you know, wasn't really a massive surprise. Remnants of Nazith, actually, was a bit of an interesting one. Like, that's not normally the sort of game I'd like or play, but I really enjoyed that. That, by the way, was kind of the speedrunning one, the one with the hook, and it's all about hooking and momentum and swinging and stuff. Not really my sort of thing, but yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. So definitely a bit of a pleasant surprise there. What's my favourite handheld console? Still the original DS, I'd say, even though it's a bit fat and chunky these days. But there were so many good games on the original DS, damn it. I have so many hours on my original save file in Pokemon Diamond I still have. Oh, blimey, well over 400. Any chance of another community playday coming up? I need to organise it. I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but yes, I will try and get one sorted out as soon as we're a little bit more caught up on day-to-day videos. As an educated man schooled in the classics, would you say a singular Weetabix is a Weetabix or a multiple Weetabix Weetabixes? No, I'm going to say Weetabix is both singular and plural. It's like sheep, but like a Weetabix. Now that Stalker miniseries has finally arrived, does that mean a Dragon Age full series is just around the corner? Not just around the corner. I'm playing with a few ideas for what might replace Skyrim. I'm not sure exactly what it's going to be. I've got a couple of different ideas, but The two that are the front runners are definitely very, very big, popular, often requested games that I think I would actually work well with. Are bowls oddly shaped cups without handles? No. Mugs are just bowls that have spent a lot of time in the gym. It's the other way around, actually. Why are you so much better at XCOM than I or most other people were on their first time? One, I think there's an element of luck. There's just been pure luck. And two, like I was saying before, like, you absorb information faster than you would do normally just because so many people have, rather unfortunately, just kind of spoilt it a little bit for me in the comments. So that's probably partially why. When dealing with games with an obtuse interface, have you ever considered reaching out to fans of these series before starting them to get a rundown on the mechanics and the interface, or is the blind aspect part of what makes you enjoy the game? The thing is, I can't know whether a game is obtuse ahead of time. Like, a game might look really simple and have a neat UI, but might be really, really deep and have loads of mechanics that, like, hidden in the background. I can't really know that. A game might also have, like, you know, a really, really messy UI, but actually be quite simple. So I don't want to actually go, like, you know, reaching out to fan communities ahead of every single video I make in case it turns out to be really obtuse and have loads of secret stuff in the background, because that will be really, really slow, and most of the time it will be pointless. So I'm happier just going a little bit blind and then trying to figure stuff out as best I can as I go along. And the fact that videos are heavily edited means that, like, if I'm looking at something thinking, I just have no idea what I'm looking at right now, I can pause, I can go, I can look at a wiki article, and then I can come back and we can just edit that out and we can pretend it never happened, which can be sometimes why I just learn things halfway through an episode. What will be your strategy in a zombie apocalypse? Run as fast as I can while also just quietly in the background accepting I'm going to die. Alright, I'm not in real life a good survival specialist despite the number of survival video games I've played. I'd probably just kind of basically accept it. And maybe, in fact, I wouldn't even bother running. Maybe I just barricade myself in and say, you know what? Maybe if I'm lucky, the army will roll through and I'll be fine. And if I'm not, then, Sailor V, or Sailor Undead V, I suppose. Have you heard of Mutant Year Zero Road to Eden? No, that's completely new to me. A stealth RPG meets XCOM from the designers of Hitman. Okay, now you're just making that up, because that sounds too good for me to have not heard of. Claire, look up Mutant Year Zero Road to Eden. Let's get that on the shortlist, please. John, could you listen to the following two jazz pieces and rate for smoothness from 1 to smooth skin? I don't know how that works. Right. I did listen to these. I saw this question ahead of time. Together Again by David Koz. To be honest, I was a bit unimpressed with. It just kind of felt like background music to me. I didn't really enjoy that one. Coffee Cold by Gouts McDermott, however, I enjoyed a bit more. I actually quite enjoyed listening to that one. So yes, that one's maybe more of a 7. There we go. Would you say that improving weapons and armor and using enchanting, you're breaking your no smithing rule in Skyrim? I don't know whether I'd do it differently, like, now if I went back. Because, like, if I literally did no improving, and I only had weapons in their base form. Like, weapons in their base form and armor in their base form, like, at this point is, like, for my best weapons, I'm pretty sure, yeah, the smithing, or rather the improving, like, makes them twice as effective, and then the enchantments add another 50% on top of that. So basically, like, a weapon, once it's improved enchanted, is 3 times more powerful than the default weapon, give or take, at my current level of enchanting and smithing. And, like, the problem there is, like, if I were 3 times more vulnerable and doing 3 times less damage, like, I'd just be getting one-shotted and killed all the time. And all I'd have to do would basically be just hide behind, like, you know, anything else. Hide behind companions, hide behind conjuration, hide at the back and constantly be healing up. I don't think it would be particularly fun. I don't mind the fact my character's gone on a journey from starting off incredibly flimsy and vulnerable and scared of everything to now being an unstoppable god king. I like games where you go on that journey, which is something I think the Far Cry games are very good at. Like, on the high difficulties of Far Cry, you start off very vulnerable, but you slowly craft and work your way up to being an unstoppable killing machine. And I like that your character can go on that journey. So I'm pretty happy with the current state of things, but I might well put the game up to legendary difficulty for the last few parts. I'm not sure. How many times did you have to re-record any of Benor's final farewell scenes so he wouldn't interrupt your touching goodbye with "Whoa"? I don't think he actually did during the final one. He was behaved during the final one, but plenty of times he was just "ing" in the background, and normally I just left it in because it just kind of amused me. What's your opinion on naval battles in Total War? Should they come back, or is the current system good enough? I don't think anyone thinks the current system of auto-resolving, like it is in Warhammer 2, is good enough. I'm not 100% convinced by the new system that I've seen in Thrones of Britannia, where basically they're just on transport ships and the battle just happens on the sea, where everyone's just moving around a bit more slowly because they're on slightly unwieldy boats. It's a bit of a mess, but then the only battles I've seen in it are huge battles, so I don't really know whether it kind of works that well. Like, I'm not sure Total War's ever quite nailed the naval battles, to be honest. I feel like potentially they might just want to leave them out entirely. Like, even the auto-resolve situation doesn't strike me as a good idea. Like, honestly, I'd probably say completely abandon it and just say, okay, troops can transport over the sea, but while they're being transported over the sea, like, they can't be attacked. And the way to stop people just kind of parking and leaving troops out at sea until it's a good idea is to basically just have a sea-based attrition under all circumstances. So while you're out on the ocean, you're always suffering ocean attrition, so your army's getting weaker and weaker, so people can't just basically camp on the sea until the right time to pop ashore just kind of shows up. But yeah, I'd say basically just take naval out entirely and definitely don't just leave it with auto-resolve, because I don't think that works very well. If you had one opportunity to make a whole new franchise of games, what direction would you go in and what would the name be? We've already discussed this. It's Pirates, it's the Rats on Boats game. Do you ever worry as the community grows you might slightly lose touch with the community? In some ways, yes. Absolutely. Like, as time goes by and as the community's grown, like, inevitably I get a little bit more distant from any individual member in it. And, like, partly that's just because, like, I used to try and be super close as possible to everyone, but I realised, like, it was stressing me out so much. Because I was spending so much time having to respond to every message and trying to, like, reply to every comment that had a question and being involved with every topic on the subreddit, and then there was the Discord and trying to be present there as well, and it was too much. It was stressing me out and it was taking huge amounts of time. So, like, I have taken a little bit of a step back from some of it, and now I let the mod teams handle a lot more of the day-to-day running of that. I've kind of, you know, basically put Claire in charge of overseeing large parts of that. I still try and be, like, you know, present in the comments and very present on Twitter. But yeah, I have taken a bit of a step back elsewhere and it's helped me be a lot less stressed out. So it was definitely a good idea for my own mental well-being. Have you ever played Don't Starve? I think I played it once ages ago. I played it a tiny bit ages ago. I was planning to make it my Christmas special at some point, but did something else instead. So it might well show up as a Christmas or Boxing Day special at some point, I'm not sure. Would you consider doing a listing of your favourite or recommended mods for Fallout 4 or Skyrim? Honestly, I barely do any modding in Fallout 4, aside from just, like, you know, I've done Frost now. For Skyrim, you can already get a list of my favourite mods there. All the mods I've currently got installed are always listed in the description of the videos in question. I know you've told me the idea of a classics podcast or video series. Have you considered approaching historyhit.tv to get a series commissioned? Okay, that might be a little bit too far. Let's just start off with me putting together a video at some point and we'll see where it goes from there, eh? Far Cry 5 playthrough! Maybe. I'm a tiny bit burnt out on open worlds at the minute, even though I really enjoyed Far Cry 4 and Far Cry 5 by all accounts is actually pretty decent. I'm a tiny bit burnt out on open world, kind of go around map, clearing out outposts, never-ending waves of enemies coming down the road in cars. I'm a tiny bit burnt out on it. So I don't really want to play Far Cry 5 right now, because I feel like I'd kind of be more negative than I should be when I hear it's quite a good game. So I'm going to wait till I'm a little bit less burnt out, and a bit more kind of like, that sounds exciting to me, and then I might give it a look-see. Someone's brought up Phoenix Point again. Yes, I'm well aware of Phoenix Point. I am waiting to get my hands on that. That looks like, yeah, a kind of a new version of XCOM. It's a new XCOM-y thing. I definitely want to get my hands on that. And someone's brought up Hearts of Iron 4. Same as the answer earlier to Europa Universalis 4. Yeah, I'm basically going to do Crusader Kings 2. We'll see where that goes. Do you like salad cream in your sandwiches? I really don't. I'm sorry, I definitely don't. I've had it in the past. I am not a fan at all. What have happened to the old Frankenstein's monster computer from the channel's earlier days? Oh, I don't even know where it is. Where did that go? I think it might be sitting under a desk in the other room somewhere. No one's using it right now. Everyone's moved over to new computers. So the old girl, maybe we trashed it? We just kind of, yeah, tore out the hard drive and then binned it. I can't remember where it's gone now. It's probably floating around somewhere, but I don't even know where it is. Do you renounce Satan in all of his works? No, some of his works are fun. Absolutely flipping not. With the next Assassin's Creed game rumoured to be set in ancient Greece, what era of ancient Greece would you say would make the most interesting game? It's got to be the 5th century BC. Like, you've got to set it... Well, actually, the interesting question is, okay, either you go during the Peloponnesian Wars or you go during a Persian invasion. I'm going to guess they're going to go for Persian invasion, because then they can do like the assassins on one side and the Templar on the other, because screw it, forget it, everyone's either a Templar or an assassin, why the hell not, eh? So I'm going to guess that's what they're going to do somehow. But yeah, I personally would probably prefer the Peloponnesian Wars, but I suspect they're going to do a Persian invasion. Have you ever played an Ace Combat game? I do not believe I have. Any interest in the upcoming Ace Combat 7? Having not played 1 to 6, it's not going to be high up my list, I'm afraid. It is a fighter jet combat game series. I've never been so keen on kind of fighter jetty games, I'm afraid. But one final recommendation for the final one. Now, this one's rather cool. I looked at this earlier. This is rather exciting. A game for VR data visualization. Yeah, data viz VR demo. Though I did see if you wanted to put like your own data and like importing a dataset into it, you did actually need to like contact them for the closed beta. So I don't know, I'm kind of vaguely interested in maybe pulling a whole massive pile of data out of my YouTube analytics and making a video about my YouTube analytics in VR using the data viz VR actual proper closed beta if I could get access to it. It's the geekiest thing I think I've ever come up with, but it could be kind of cool. So who knows, that might well be a thing. We'll have to see. And that is your lot. We will leave things off here at this point. That has been the Patroncast for March, kind of. And we will be back next month, of course. If you have any follow-up questions, do just kind of shove them in the comments below. I'll keep an eye on those and get back to you. Hopefully that has been good. Yeah, I'm glad we got to discuss some collabs at the beginning there. That's a fun little topic to go into, so I'm glad we got to discuss that. I will see you all next week. Thank you all so very, very much indeed. It's, yeah, for ad revenue, it's a quiet time of the year. The demonetization fiasco continues on YouTube, so Patreon is a real kind of godsend at the moment. It's hugely important. It really gives Claire and I a lot of security to kind of keep doing what we're doing and getting out these videos. So thank you all so very, very much indeed. And I will see you again next month. But in the meantime, I've been John, spent many a true nerd, and this has been the March kind of 2018 Patroncast. Thank you very much, and goodbye.